The envelope felt like poison in her hands. Elena Cruz stood on the wooden platform of Willow Creek Station, her fingers trembling as she read the words that destroyed her future in 3 short sentences. Upon further consideration, your background makes you unsuitable for our family. The arrangement is canceled. Do not come. 24 years old, 2,000 miles from home, and every penny she owned had gone into the train ticket west. The man who'd promised marriage through careful letters over 6 months, who'd written about partnership and new beginnings, had taken one look at her Spanish surname and decided she wasn't worth keeping. Now here she was, stranded in Colorado territory with 17 cents, a battered trunk, and nowhere to go. But Elena Cruz wasn't the type to break easily. If you're watching this, stay until the end to see how a woman rejected and abandoned builds something that can't be taken away. And hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The late afternoon sun cut across the platform like a blade, throwing long shadows from the few buildings that made up Willow Creek. Elena read the letter 3 more times, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something bearable. They didn't. She folded the paper carefully and tucked it back into her coat pocket. Her hands had stopped shaking. That was something. Around her, the station cleared out fast. A family with 4 loud children piled into a wagon. 2 ranch hands collected supplies and rode off without a backward glance. Within 10 minutes, Elena stood alone except for the station agent, a gray-haired man who kept glancing at her through the ticket window with increasing concern. She picked up her trunk, heavy with the things she'd thought she'd need for a new life, and carried it to the far end of the platform. Sitting on it, she took stock. 17 cents wouldn't buy a meal, let alone a ticket back to Philadelphia. The boarding house she'd passed on her way through town looked expensive. Everything west of the Mississippi looked expensive when you were broke. She'd left Philadelphia with such certainty. 6 months of letters from Thomas Garrett, a merchant in Willow Creek who'd advertised for a bride in the Philadelphia Gazette. His letters had been formal but kind, talking about the beauty of the mountains, the opportunities in Colorado territory, the need for educated women in a growing town. He'd asked about her teaching experience, her knowledge of bookkeeping, whether she could manage a household. Never once had he asked about her family or where her people came from. She'd answered honestly. Elena Maria Cruz, daughter of a Mexican mother and a Spanish father, both gone now. Raised by her aunt in Philadelphia. Worked as a teacher's assistant for 3 years until the school closed. Could read and write in 2 languages. Could manage accounts. Could work hard. Apparently none of that mattered as much as her name. The station agent emerged from his office, keys jangling. "Miss, we're closing up." Elena stood. "Is there a church in town? Somewhere that takes in—" She caught herself. Somewhere a person could stay temporarily? The man's face showed genuine regret. "Methodist Church is 2 streets over, but Reverend Dale's in Denver for the week. Won't be back till Sunday." 3 days. Elena nodded. "Thank you." She waited until he'd locked the station and driven off in his buggy before she let herself feel the full weight of it. 3 days was a lifetime when you had 17 cents and no shelter. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of pine and dust. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and vast and completely indifferent to her situation. Elena had never felt so small. She was trying to decide whether to walk into town or find somewhere to sleep rough when she heard it. A child's voice, high and clear. "Papa, there's a lady!" Elena turned. A little girl stood at the edge of the platform, maybe 6 years old, with tangled brown hair and a dress that had seen better days. Behind her, leading a tired-looking horse hitched to a supply wagon, came a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing work clothes that were clean but worn thin in places. His hat shadowed his face, but Elena caught a glimpse of dark hair, a strong jaw, eyes that looked exhausted. "Maggie, leave the lady alone," he said. His voice was quiet, rough-edged, but the little girl, Maggie, ignored him completely. She walked right up to Elena with the fearless curiosity of children who haven't learned that the world can hurt them. "Why are you sitting on a trunk?" Maggie asked. Elena managed to smile. "I'm deciding what to do next." "Are you waiting for someone?" "I was, but they're not coming." The man had reached them now. Up close, Elena could see he was younger than she'd first thought, maybe 30, though something in his face made him seem older, tired. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of too many hard days. "I apologize for my daughter," he said. "She doesn't understand about bothering strangers. She's not bothering me." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "It's nice to talk to someone kind." Something flickered in the man's expression. "You all right, miss?" Elena considered lying. Pride almost made her say yes. Everything's fine. Have a good evening. But pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. "I'm stranded," she said simply. "The person I came to meet changed their mind. I don't have money for a ticket back east or a room in town." The man's jaw tightened. For a second, Elena thought he was angry at her for admitting it. Then she realized the anger wasn't directed at her at all. "That's a hell of a thing," he said, "begging your pardon for the language." Maggie tugged on his sleeve. "Papa, she needs help." "I can see that, Magpie." He looked at Elena, and she saw him weighing something. "I'm Caleb Hale. I run a ranch about 5 miles out. It's not much, but I could use someone who can cook and keep house. My daughter here has been doing her best, but she's 6 and it's too much for her." Elena's heart jumped, but she kept her voice careful. "What happened to your previous housekeeper?" "Never had one. My wife died 18 months back. Been managing on our own since." He said it flat, like he'd learned to cauterize the wound by not touching it. "I can offer room and board and a small wage. Not much. Times have been lean. But it's something." It was more than something. It was a miracle disguised as a job offer, and Elena knew better than to question miracles too closely. "I can cook," she said. "I can keep house. I can also do bookkeeping if you need it." Caleb's eyebrows rose slightly. "Bookkeeping?" "I worked for a school in Philadelphia, managed their accounts for 2 years. "Well?" He glanced at the wagon, then back at her. "I've got ledgers I haven't touched in 6 months. If you can make sense of them, that's worth something extra." Maggie was practically bouncing. "Is she coming home with us, Papa?" "That's up to her." Caleb looked at Elena. "I won't pretend it's easy work. The house is a mess. We're behind on everything. But if you're willing to work hard, I'll treat you fair." Elena stood, brushing dust from her skirt. Every instinct screamed that this was too easy, too convenient. Men didn't just offer jobs to stranded women out of kindness. There had to be a catch. But what choice did she have? Sleep on the platform and hope for charity? Walk into town and beg strangers for work? At least this man had kind eyes. At least his daughter looked at her like she was something good. "I'm willing," Elena said. "Thank you, Mr. Hale." "Caleb's fine." He hoisted her trunk into the wagon like it weighed nothing. "Climb on up. We've got about an hour's ride." Elena settled onto the wagon seat, Maggie squirming between her and Caleb. As they pulled away from the station, the little girl kept up a steady stream of chatter. "We have chickens, but one of them is mean. Papa says she's got a temper like a rattlesnake. Do you like chickens? I like them when they're not pecking me. We have a milk cow named Bessie, and she's nice, but sometimes she kicks the bucket, not on purpose. She just gets nervous. Do you get nervous?" "Maggie," Caleb said, "let the lady breathe." But Elena found herself smiling. "I do get nervous, but chickens don't scare me." "Good, because Clara, that's the mean one, she's very scary." The road wound through open grassland that gradually gave way to rougher country. Pine trees clustered in the draws. The mountains loomed closer, their peaks still touched with snow despite it being late May. Caleb drove in silence, and Elena was grateful for it. She needed time to let her mind catch up with the last hour. This morning she'd been on a train full of nervous hope about meeting Thomas Garrett. Now she was riding toward a stranger's ranch with no real idea what she was walking into. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Caleb nodded. "Why did you offer me work? You don't know anything about me." He was quiet for a moment, eyes on the road. "I know you were honest about your situation when you could have lied. I know you didn't ask me for help. My daughter did. And I know what it's like to be stuck with nowhere to go." He glanced at her. "That enough of an answer?" It wasn't, really, but Elena had learned that sometimes you don't get the whole truth right away. Sometimes you have to earn it. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." They rode on as the sun dropped lower. Maggie eventually fell asleep against Elena's arm, her small body warm and trusting. Elena looked down at the tangled brown hair and felt something shift in her chest. This child had no mother. This man had no help. And Elena had nothing left to lose. Maybe that made them even. The ranch appeared as the last light was fading. a collection of weathered buildings nestled in a shallow valley. The main house was 2 stories, wood-framed with a sagging porch and windows that needed washing. A barn stood off to one side, and beyond it, Elena
This
could see
story
a
was
few
posted
fenced
on the
pastures
channel
with
west
cattle
of
grazing.
Betrayal.
It looked
Please do not
tired,
repost
worn
it
down,
in any form.
but not defeated. Caleb pulled the wagon up to the house and gently lifted his sleeping daughter. "I'll show you to your room. It's not much." Elena followed him inside, carrying her trunk. The interior matched the exterior, clean enough, but cluttered with the debris of 2 people barely keeping ahead of chaos. Dishes stacked in the kitchen, laundry piled on a chair, books and tools and random objects scattered across every surface. Caleb led her upstairs to a small room with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the barn. This was supposed to be a guest room. Never had guests. He laid Maggie on the bed in the next room over, then came back. "Bathroom's downstairs. We've got running water, but the pump's temperamental. I'll show you everything in the morning." "Thank you," Elena said again. The words felt inadequate. Caleb nodded and started to leave, then paused in the doorway. "The man who wrote you that letter, he's a fool." Before Elena could respond, he was gone, his boots heavy on the stairs. She sat on the bed, testing the mattress. It was thin but clean. Through the window, she could see stars beginning to emerge, more than she'd ever seen in Philadelphia. Elena pulled the letter from her pocket and read it one more time. "Your background makes you unsuitable." She thought about burning it. Instead, she folded it carefully and tucked it into her trunk underneath her spare dress. "Some things you keep to remember what you survived." The next morning, Elena woke before dawn, habit from years of early school schedules. She dressed quickly and went downstairs to find the kitchen even more chaotic than she'd realized in last night's dim light. She started with the dishes, heating water and scrubbing methodically. Then she found flour and salt and lard and made biscuits from memory. By the time Caleb came down, coffee was brewing and the smell of baking filled the house. He stopped in the doorway, staring. "Morning," Elena said. "You didn't have to." "I did. You're paying me to keep house." She pulled the biscuits from the oven. "Sit. I'll make eggs if you tell me where you keep them." "Chicken coop, but I can—" "Mr. Hale, sit." Something almost like a smile crossed his face. He sat. Elena found the chicken coop easily enough. Clara, the mean hen, did indeed try to peck her. Elena stared her down until the bird retreated, clucking indignantly. She gathered 6 eggs and brought them back inside. By the time Maggie stumbled downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes, breakfast was on the table. Biscuits, eggs, bacon Elena had found hanging in the cold room, and coffee for Caleb. Maggie's eyes went wide. "Is this real?" "It's real, Magpie." Caleb was looking at Elena with something that might have been gratitude or might have been something more complicated. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Elena noticed Caleb watching her, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. Finally, he said, "You really worked for a school?" 3 years. "Why'd you leave?" Elena spread butter on a biscuit. "School closed. City cut funding. I could have found another position, but I wanted something different." She met his eyes. "I wanted to start over somewhere new." "And you thought marrying a stranger was the way to do it?" There was no judgment in the question, just curiosity. Elena appreciated that. "I thought it was practical," she said. "A partnership. Someone who needed what I could offer, and vice versa." "What did he offer?" "Security. A home. A purpose." She shrugged. "Turns out he was offering it conditionally." Caleb's jaw tightened again, that same anger from yesterday. "His loss." Maggie had been following the conversation with the intensity of a child who understands more than adults think. "I'm glad he was mean," she announced, "because now you're here." Elena felt her throat tighten. "I'm glad too." After breakfast, Caleb showed her around properly. The house was bigger than it looked. 4 bedrooms upstairs, a parlor and dining room downstairs along with the kitchen. Everything needed work. Wood floors that needed scrubbing. Windows that needed washing. Curtains that needed mending. "Take it at your own pace," Caleb said. "I don't expect miracles." But Elena had already started making a list in her head. First the kitchen, then the parlor, then deep clean the bedrooms one by one. She'd need supplies, soap, vinegar, beeswax for the furniture. "Do you go into town often?" she asked. "Once a week for supplies. Why?" I'll need some things. For cleaning. Caleb nodded. Make a list. We'll go Saturday. Over the next few days, Elena threw herself into the work. It felt good to have purpose again, to make tangible progress. The kitchen gleamed, the parlor went from cluttered to comfortable. Maggie followed her around like a devoted puppy, chattering constantly, but also helping in small ways, folding dish towels, organizing books, feeding the chickens. Do you have a mama? Maggie asked one afternoon as they hung laundry. Elena had been expecting this question. I did. She died when I was young. Mine too. Maggie clipped a sock to the line with intense concentration. I don't remember her much. Papa says that's okay, that she'd understand. But sometimes I think I do remember. Little bits, like she smelled like flowers and she sang songs. Those are good things to remember. Do you remember your mama? Elena thought about it. I remember she made the best tortillas and she laughed a lot, even when things were hard. I wish I remembered more. Maggie's small face was serious. Papa doesn't talk about her much. I think it makes him too sad. Elena glanced toward the barn where Caleb was working. Grief is hard. Everyone handles it differently. Are you sad? About the man who didn't want you? Leave it to a 6-year-old to cut straight to the bone. Elena considered her answer carefully. I was, she said, but now I think maybe he did me a favor. Because if he'd been kind, I would have stayed. And I wouldn't be here with you. Maggie beamed. That's what I think too. That evening, after Maggie was in bed, Elena finally tackled the ledgers Caleb had mentioned. She found them in his office, a small room off the parlor that was mostly used for storage. The books were a disaster. 6 months of scribbled notes and unreconciled accounts. She was deep in the numbers when Caleb appeared in the doorway. You don't have to do that tonight, he said. I want to understand how the ranch operates. Elena looked up. You're owed money. A lot of it. Why haven't you collected? Caleb leaned against the doorframe. Because most of the people who owe me are in the same position I'm in, barely scraping by. I send them bills and they'll pay when they can. And in the meantime, we make do. Elena turned back to the ledger, adding up figures. You've sold cattle to the Robertson Ranch 3 times this year. They've paid you half what they owe. Yeah, well, Jim Robertson's wife is sick. They've got medical bills. That's generous of you, but it's also why you can barely afford help. Elena closed the book. You need to collect at least some of what you're owed, otherwise you'll lose this place. Caleb's expression hardened. I'm not going to squeeze people who are struggling. I'm not asking you to squeeze them. I'm asking you to have a conversation. Set up payment plans. Make it clear that you need the money too. Elena stood, facing him. You can be kind and still protect yourself. They stared at each other. Elena wondered if she'd overstepped, if he'd tell her to mind her own business. Instead, Caleb said, You sound like my wife. She used to say the same thing. Was she right? Usually. He rubbed the back of his neck. All right, I'll talk to Robertson next time I see him. Elena nodded. Good. He turned to leave, then stopped. Elena? Thank you for all of it. The house, the cooking, the books. You're doing more than I expected. I'm doing what you're paying me for. No, Caleb said quietly. You're doing more than that. After he left, Elena sat in the quiet office, feeling the weight of his words. She'd been here less than a week. Already this place was starting to feel like something she couldn't quite name. Not home. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of one. Saturday came with clear skies and the promise of heat. Elena woke early and made breakfast, then helped Maggie get ready for town. The little girl was vibrating with excitement. Can we get peppermint sticks? If your father says yes, Elena said, braiding Maggie's hair. Caleb came downstairs looking cleaner than Elena had yet seen him. Fresh shirt, hat brushed, even his boots polished. He caught her looking and shrugged. Town's the only place I see people. Might as well look presentable. The ride to Willow Creek was pleasant. Maggie sat between them again, telling elaborate stories about the chickens and their secret plans to take over the ranch. Caleb listened with the patient expression of a man who'd heard 1,000 of his daughter's stories and would happily hear 1,000 more. Elena watched them, these two people who'd accidentally become part of her life, and felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. Careful, she told herself. Don't get attached. But it might already be too late for that. Willow Creek was busier on a Saturday. The main street bustled with ranchers and their families all doing their weekly shopping.
This story
Caleb
was
pulled the
posted
wagon
on
up
the
in front of
channel
the general
west of
store.
Betrayal.
"I've
Please
got
do not
business at the
repost
feed
it
store,"
in any
he
form.
said. "You two handle the supplies?" Elena nodded. Caleb handed her money, more than she expected, and disappeared down the street. Inside the general store, Elena worked through her list while Maggie pressed her nose against the candy counter. The shopkeeper, a thin woman with suspicious eyes, kept glancing at Elena. "You're new," the woman said finally. "Yes, ma'am." "Working for Caleb Hale?" "That's right." The woman's expression tightened. "Housekeeper?" Elena heard the judgment in the question. She met the woman's eyes steadily. "Yes. Housekeeper, cook, and bookkeeper." The woman wrapped Elena's purchases with unnecessary force. "Caleb's been alone a long time. People talk." "People always talk," Elena said calmly. "That's not my concern." She paid and left, Maggie trailing behind with a peppermint stick. Outside, they nearly ran into a well-dressed man coming up the steps. He was tall, handsome in a calculated way with blonde hair and expensive clothes. His eyes swept over Elena with obvious interest. "Well," he said, "you must be the young woman who was waiting at the station last week." Elena's stomach dropped. She knew who this was before he said another word. "Thomas Garrett," he continued, tipping his hat. "I believe you were expecting me." Maggie had gone very still beside her. Elena kept her voice level. "I was, until I got your letter." Garrett had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Yes, about that. I hope you understand it wasn't personal." "It was extremely personal, Mr. Garrett. I have a position to maintain in this town, a reputation, certain expectations. I understand perfectly." Elena stepped around him. "If you'll excuse me." He caught her arm, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her. "Wait, I've been thinking, perhaps I was hasty. If you're still looking for a position, I could use someone with your skills. Not as a wife, of course, but perhaps as a companion for my mother. She's elderly and needs help." Elena looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. "No, thank you. The pay would be generous." "I said no. Be reasonable. What else are you going to do? Caleb Hale can barely afford to keep his ranch running, let alone pay a decent wage." "Papa pays her fine." Both adults looked down. Maggie was glaring at Garrett with pure fury, her small hands clenched into fists. "And she's ours," Maggie continued. "You can't have her. You already said you didn't want her." Garrett released Elena's arm, looking embarrassed. "I didn't mean—" "Come on, Maggie." Elena took the little girl's hand. "We're done here." They walked away, leaving Thomas Garrett standing on the steps of the general store, looking like a man who'd just lost something he didn't know he wanted. Elena's heart was pounding. She found a bench near the wagon and sat down, pulling Maggie close. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Maggie leaned against her. "He's a bad man." "No, he's just a man who makes choices I don't agree with." "But he hurt you." Elena smoothed Maggie's hair. "He tried. But you know what? He didn't succeed. I'm fine. Better than fine." They sat together in the sunshine until Caleb appeared, carrying a sack of feed. He took one look at Elena's face and his expression darkened. "What happened?" Elena told him, leaving out nothing. When she finished, Caleb set down the feed with deliberate care. "Stay here," he said. "Caleb—" But he was already striding toward the general store. Elena watched as he found Thomas Garrett and pulled him aside. The conversation was brief and too quiet for Elena to hear, but she saw Garrett's face go pale. Caleb said something final, then turned and walked back. He picked up the feed, loaded it into the wagon, and helped both Elena and Maggie up. "What did you say to him?" Elena asked as they drove out of town. "Nothing he didn't need to hear." Caleb's jaw was tight. "He won't bother you again." They rode in silence for a while. Then Maggie, who'd been unusually quiet, said, "Papa, is Elena going to stay forever?" Caleb glanced at Elena, then back at the road. "That's up to her, Magpie." "But we want her to stay, right?" "Yeah," Caleb said quietly. "We do." Elena felt that dangerous thing in her chest again, growing roots. She looked at the mountains in the distance, at the rough country rolling past, at this man and this child who'd taken her in when she had nothing. She'd come west looking for security, for a practical arrangement, for a new start. Maybe she'd found all three, just not in the way she'd expected. "I'm not going anywhere," she heard herself say. Maggie cheered. Caleb's shoulders relaxed slightly. And Elena Cruz, who'd been rejected and stranded and written off as unsuitable, felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like she might actually belong somewhere. The feeling was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. She didn't trust it yet, but she was learning to hope for it. That would have to be enough for now. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm Elena hadn't expected to find comforting. She woke before dawn, made coffee, started breakfast while Caleb did the early morning chores. Maggie would stumble down around sunrise, still half asleep, and climb into Elena's lap while the bacon cooked. By the time they sat down to eat, the house would be filled with the smell of food and coffee and something that felt dangerously close to normal. Elena told herself not to get used to it. This was temporary, a job, a way station between the life she'd left and whatever came next. But her heart wasn't listening. The house transformed under her attention. She scrubbed floors until they gleamed, mended curtains, organized the chaos that had accumulated during 18 months of grief and survival. In the evenings, after Maggie was asleep, she worked on the ledgers, creating order from the mess of unpaid debts and scattered accounts. Caleb would sit across from her sometimes, supposedly reading but mostly just watching her work. It made Elena nervous at first, that quiet attention, but gradually she realized he wasn't judging or questioning. He was just grateful. "You keep looking at me like I'm performing a miracle," she said one night, not looking up from the ledger. "Maybe you are." Elena glanced at him. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, expression unreadable in the lamplight. "It's just bookkeeping. It's not just anything." Caleb straightened. This place was falling apart. I was falling apart. Now I come home and the house is clean, my daughter's happy, there's food on the table. That feels like a miracle to me. Elena's chest tightened. She went back to the numbers, not trusting herself to respond. "I talked to Jim Robertson," Caleb said after a moment, "about the money he owes. And? You were right. He said he'd been meaning to settle up, just didn't know how to bring it up. We worked out a payment plan. He'll start next month." "Good." He also said his wife's doing better. Medicine's working. Elena smiled despite herself. "I'm glad." They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, a coyote called somewhere in the hills. Elena had grown to love that sound, the wildness of it. Philadelphia seemed like another lifetime, a place that had happened to someone else. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb's voice was careful. "Yes." "You ever regret coming west, even with how it turned out?" Elena set down her pen and considered the question honestly. "No. I regret trusting Thomas Garrett's letters. I regret not asking harder questions, but I don't regret the decision to leave." "Why not?" "Because staying would have been worse. Staying in Philadelphia meant working jobs that paid nothing, living with my aunt who resented every bite of food I ate, watching my life get smaller every year." She met his eyes. "At least coming west gave me a chance at something different. Even if that something was getting stranded at a train station? Even then. Because I'm here now, and this," she gestured at the room, the house, everything beyond it. "This is better than anything I left behind." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm glad you're here too." The words hung in the air between them, heavier than they should have been. Elena felt her pulse quicken. "I should finish these accounts," she said, returning to the ledger with forced concentration. Caleb took the hint and stood. "Good night, Elena." "Good night." She listened to his footsteps on the stairs, the creak of floorboards overhead as he moved through his room. Only when she heard his door close did she let herself stop pretending to work. This was getting complicated. She could feel it happening, could feel herself starting to care too much about whether Caleb smiled at breakfast, whether Maggie's reading was improving, whether the ranch made enough profit this quarter to buy new equipment. These weren't her problems. This wasn't her family, except it was starting to feel like both. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Elena was in the garden, a small plot behind the house that she'd been trying to resurrect, when she heard horses approaching. She straightened, wiping dirt from her hands, and watched two women ride up to the house. They were well-dressed, both in their 40s, with the confident bearing of people who'd never had to worry about being stranded anywhere. One was blonde and sharp-featured, the other dark-haired with a round, pleasant face. Caleb emerged from the barn, looking surprised. Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Crawford.
This story was
Caleb,
posted on the channel
the
west
blonde
of
woman's smile
Betrayal.
was polite.
Please
but
do not
didn't reach her
repost it
eyes.
in any form.
We were passing by and thought we'd stop in, see how you and Maggie are managing. We're managing fine, thank you. The dark-haired woman, Mrs. Crawford, noticed Elena. And who's this? Elena Cruz, my housekeeper. Elena could see both women's eyes sharpen with interest and judgment in equal measure. She wiped her hands on her apron and came forward. Ma'am, she said neutrally. How long have you been working here? Mrs. Henderson asked. 3 weeks. And where are you from? Philadelphia. The women exchanged a glance that Elena couldn't quite read. Mrs. Crawford's expression remained pleasant, but Mrs. Henderson's had taken on a calculating quality. How nice that Caleb found help, Mrs. Henderson said. It must be such a relief to have someone keeping house. A man and a young girl, living alone. People do talk, you know. Caleb's jaw tightened. Let them talk. I'm simply saying that appearances matter. Perhaps if Miss Cruz had family in the area, or if there were other staff. I don't need other staff. And Elena's business is her own. Mrs. Crawford laid a gentle hand on her friend's arm. We didn't come to pry, Caleb. We wanted to invite Maggie to Mary's birthday party next week. All the children will be there. Caleb visibly relaxed. Maggie would like that, thank you. Wonderful. Saturday afternoon. Mrs. Crawford smiled at Elena. You're welcome to come as well, Miss Cruz. We'd love to get to know you better. Mrs. Henderson's expression suggested she'd love nothing of the sort, but she said nothing. After the women left, Caleb stood staring at the road with the look of someone who'd just fought a battle he hadn't wanted. Don't mind them, he said finally, especially Virginia Henderson. She's always got opinions about how other people should live. She thinks I'm improper. She thinks everyone's improper. Last year, she tried to get the school teacher fired for wearing trousers on a trail ride. Caleb shook his head. You haven't done anything wrong. I'm a single woman living in a house with a single man. In some circles, that's everything wrong. We're not doing anything improper. I know that. You know that. But Mrs. Henderson has a point about appearances. Caleb turned to face her fully. You want to leave? No. The word came out too fast, too honest. Elena forced herself to slow down. I'm just saying I understand the situation is complicated. Life's always complicated. That doesn't mean you run from it. He held her gaze. I told you when you got here. I treat people fair. That includes defending you when busybodies come around asking questions. Elena felt something warm unfold in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency. He started toward the barn, then paused. You going to that party Saturday? Should I? Up to you. But Maggie would probably like having you there. That settled it. Elena would go, Mrs. Henderson's disapproval notwithstanding. Saturday arrived with clouds building over the mountains, promising rain. Elena dressed carefully in her best dress, dark blue cotton, nothing fancy, but clean and well-fitted. She braided her hair and pinned it up, studying herself in the small mirror. She looked different than she had 3 weeks ago. Her skin had color from working outdoors. Her hands were rougher, but her eyes looked clearer, more settled. Downstairs, Maggie was vibrating with excitement in her Sunday dress. Caleb had made an effort too. Clean shirt, brush jacket, even his hair combed back. You look nice, Elena said, without thinking. Caleb's ears went slightly red. You too. The Crawford Ranch was bigger than Caleb's, with a large main house and several outbuildings. Wagons and horses filled the yard. Children ran everywhere, shrieking with joy. Long tables groaned with food. Maggie took off running the moment they arrived, joining a group of girls her age. Elena and Caleb stood awkwardly near the wagon. We could leave, Caleb offered. Come back for her later. Or we could be adults and socialize. I was afraid you'd say that. Mrs. Crawford spotted them and came over, genuinely welcoming. She introduced Elena to what felt like half of Willow Creek, ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers, the doctor, the school teacher. Most were friendly enough, though Elena caught plenty of curious glances and whispered conversations. Mrs. Henderson held court near the punch bowl, surrounded by a group of women who kept shooting looks in Elena's direction. Elena ignored them and focused on the people who were actually kind. The school teacher, Miss Alice Porter, was particularly pleasant. She was young, maybe 25, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile. I heard you worked for a school in Philadelphia, Alice said. For 3 years. I wasn't a teacher, just assisted with administration and accounts. Still, that's valuable experience. We're always desperate for educated people out here. Alice lowered her voice. And between you and me, some of these ranchers' children could use more schooling. Half can barely read. They talked about books and education until Caleb appeared at Elena's elbow with 2 cups of punch. You look thirsty, he said, handing her one. Thank you. Alice glanced between them with barely concealed amusement. I should check on my students. Lovely to meet you, Elena. After she left, Caleb said, You're good at this. At what? Talking to people. Making them like you. Is that what I'm doing? You made Alice Porter laugh 3 times in 5 minutes. That's practically a miracle. She's usually serious as a judge. Elena sipped her punch. Maybe she just needed someone to talk to about something other than ranch business. They stood together, watching the party. Children played games. Adults clustered in conversation groups. It was the kind of community gathering Elena had imagined when she'd thought about coming west. People who knew each other, who'd built something together in hard country. You miss it? Caleb asked. City life? Sometimes. I miss libraries, theaters, shops with more than one of everything. She paused. But I don't miss feeling invisible. In Philadelphia, I was just another poor relation, another mouth to feed. Here you matter. Elena looked at him. He was watching her with that quiet intensity that made her pulse race. Yes, she said softly. Here I matter. The moment stretched, fragile and full of possibility. Then Maggie came tearing over, breathless and happy. Papa, Elena, come see. We're playing hide and seek, and I found the best hiding spot. The spell broke. Caleb ruffled his daughter's hair. Show me. Elena followed them, grateful for the interruption and disappointed by it in equal measure. The party continued until late afternoon, when the threatened rain finally arrived. Families scattered, loading into wagons and calling goodbyes. Caleb went to collect Maggie, while Elena helped Mrs. Crawford carry leftover food inside. Thank you for inviting us, Elena said. Of course. You're part of the community now? Mrs. Crawford hesitated. I hope Virginia didn't make you uncomfortable earlier. She means well. She just has strong opinions? Exactly. Mrs. Crawford smiled. For what it's worth, I think Caleb's lucky to have found you. That ranch was going under. He was drowning and too stubborn to ask for help. He's still stubborn. That's a Hale family trait. His wife was the same way. Mrs. Crawford's expression turned thoughtful. Sarah was my friend. She would have liked you, I think. She would have liked knowing Maggie had someone looking after her properly. The words hit Elena harder than expected. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. And don't let the gossips bother you. Small towns always find something to talk about. Next month it'll be someone else's business under scrutiny. On the ride home, with rain drumming on the wagon roof and Maggie asleep between them, Caleb said, You did good today. I stood around and talked. Not exactly heroic. You made connections. People liked you. That matters more than you think. He glanced at her. Mrs. Crawford told me what she said. About Sarah. Elena's breath caught. I hope that was all right. It was fine. She was right. Sarah would have liked you. His voice was quiet, careful. I think she would have been relieved knowing Maggie has you. Caleb, I'm not trying to make it weird. I just wanted you to know. They rode in silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, lightning flickered over the mountains. The storm was getting worse. By the time they reached the ranch, rain was coming down in sheets. Caleb pulled the wagon as close to the house as he could, and they made a run for it, Caleb carrying Maggie while Elena grabbed what supplies she could. Inside, they stood dripping on the kitchen floor. Caleb laid Maggie on the couch in the parlor, covering her with a blanket. She didn't even stir. I'll make coffee, Elena said, moving toward the stove. Forget coffee. You're soaked. Caleb grabbed a blanket from the closet and wrapped it around her shoulders. Go change. I'll get the fire going. Elena obeyed, going upstairs to her room. She changed into dry clothes and toweled her hair, listening to the storm rage outside. When she came back down, Caleb had indeed gotten a fire going in the parlor fireplace. He'd changed too, and was standing at the window watching the lightning. "Hell of a storm," he said. Elena
This story
joined
was
him.
posted
Rain
on the
lashed
channel
the
west
glass.
of Betrayal.
Wind howled
Please do
around
not
the eaves.
repost it in any
Is this
form.
normal? For spring, yeah. We'll probably lose some shingles, maybe a fence or two. Will the animals be all right? They know where to shelter. He turned from the window. You worried? A little. I've never been in a real storm like this. You'll get used to them. Out here, weather's just part of life. Lightning cracked close by, making Elena jump. Without thinking, she grabbed Caleb's arm. He went very still. Sorry, she said, starting to pull away. But his hand came up to cover hers, keeping it there. It's all right. They stood like that, her hand on his arm, his hand over hers, while the storm raged outside. Elena's heart was pounding harder than the thunder. Elena, Caleb said quietly, I need to tell you something. What? He turned to face her fully, not letting go of her hand. You've been here almost a month now, and I keep thinking... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I didn't plan this. Hiring you was supposed to be simple, just someone to help around the house. I know. But it's not simple anymore. You're not just help, you're... He made a frustrated sound. I'm not good at this. Words. Elena's breath had gone shallow. Try. You matter. To me. To Maggie. You've become... Another pause. Important. The word landed between them like something physical. Important. Not just useful or convenient or helpful. Important. Caleb, I know it's only been a month. I know you came here planning to work, not to... He gestured helplessly. Whatever this is, but I need you to know that if you stay, it's not just because I need a housekeeper. It's because I want you here. Elena's throat was tight. Want me here? How? However you'll have me. The honesty of it, the raw vulnerability in his voice nearly undid her. This man who'd lost his wife, who'd been barely surviving, who'd given Elena a chance when she had nothing, he was standing here telling her she mattered. I'm afraid, she admitted, of wanting this too much, of it being temporary. What if it's not temporary? How can you know that? We barely know each other. Caleb's hand tightened on hers. I know you get up before dawn every day, even though you don't have to. I know you're patient with my daughter, even when she's being difficult. I know you reorganized my entire disaster of an office and didn't complain once. I know you defend yourself to nosy neighbors without losing your temper. I know you're brave and smart, and you work harder than anyone I've ever met. He paused. Maybe that's not everything, but it's enough. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Thomas Garrett knew me for 6 months through letters and decided I wasn't enough. You've known me 4 weeks. Thomas Garrett's an idiot who judged you on your name instead of your character. I'm not him. Caleb's voice was fierce. And you are enough. More than enough. Outside, the storm was starting to ease. Inside, Elena felt like she was standing on the edge of something that would change everything. What are you asking me? She whispered. I'm asking if you could see yourself staying, not as hired help, as... He took a breath. As part of this family, as my partner, as someone who belongs here because this is home, not because I'm paying you wages. That's a lot to ask after 4 weeks. I know, but I've learned not to waste time pretending I don't want things that matter. His eyes held hers. You matter, Elena. And I think I matter to you too, so I'm asking. She could say no. Could tell him it was too soon, too fast, too risky. Could protect herself from the possibility of being rejected again, cast aside again, found unsuitable again. Or she could take the leap. You do matter to me, she said finally. Both of you, more than I planned on. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. Ask me again in another month. Something that might have been relief crossed Caleb's face. Fair enough. He started to pull away, but Elena kept hold of his hand. Caleb? Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me. That's easy. You're hard to miss. They stood there while the fire crackled and the last of the rain pattered against the windows. Eventually, Caleb said, I should check the barn, make sure nothing's flooding. Want help? Nah, stay warm. I'll be back in a few minutes. After he left, Elena sank into the chair by the fire. Her hands were shaking slightly. She looked at Maggie, still sleeping peacefully on the couch, unaware that the adults in her life were figuring out something complicated and terrifying and wonderful. What was she doing? A month ago, she'd been stranded at a train station with 17 cents. Now she was considering what? Staying permanently? Becoming part of a family? But even as doubt circled, something deeper pushed back. She thought about the past 4 weeks, waking up with purpose, watching Maggie learn to read, working alongside Caleb to make the ranch function, the satisfaction of seeing chaos transform into order, of knowing her work mattered. She thought about Thomas Garrett's letter, crumpled in her trunk upstairs. Your background makes you unsuitable. Caleb had never asked about her background. He'd asked about her skills, her honesty, her willingness to work. And when she'd proven herself, he'd seen her value. Maybe that was what mattered. Not where you came from, but what you built once you got there. The door opened and Caleb came back in, wet again, but grinning. Good news. Nothing's broken. We might even get away without losing shingles. That is good news. He hung his coat and came to warm himself by the fire. For a while they just sat together, listening to the storm fade and the fire pop. Elena? Caleb's voice was soft, almost hesitant. Yeah? I meant what I said, about wanting you here. But I don't want you to feel pressured. If you need time to figure things out, that's fine. If you decide this isn't what you want, I'll understand. You'd let me leave? I'd never keep you somewhere you didn't want to be. He looked at her. But I hope you want to be here. Elena met his gaze. So do I. The days that followed felt different, charged. Elena caught herself watching Caleb more than she should. The way he worked with the horses, patient and firm. The way he listened to Maggie's endless chatter with complete attention. The way his hands looked when he fixed the fence, scarred and capable. She wondered if he was watching her too. Sometimes she'd turn and find him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. They were careful around each other, polite, but underneath the politeness ran something electric. Maggie, with the eerie perception of children, noticed. Are you and Papa friends now? She asked one afternoon while they baked bread. We've always been friends. Different friends, like you smile more when he's around, and he doesn't look so sad all the time. Elena kneaded dough, trying to find the right words. Sometimes adults need time to figure out how they feel about each other. Do you like him? Of course I like him. No, I mean like. The way people do in stories. Elena stopped kneading and looked at this precocious 6-year-old. Why are you asking? Because I want you to stay forever, and if you like Papa, maybe you will. The simple honesty of it made Elena's chest ache. She pulled Maggie into a flowery hug. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Not for a long time. Promise? I promise. It was a reckless promise, maybe, but watching Maggie's face light up, Elena couldn't regret it. That evening, after dinner, Caleb asked Elena to walk with him. They left Maggie with her books and stepped out into the cool twilight. I've been thinking, Caleb said as they walked toward the pasture, about what you said, asking again in a month. That was only a week ago. I know, but I keep thinking about the question itself, what I'm actually asking for. He stopped, leaning against the fence. When Sarah died, I thought that was it for me. One chance at a family, and it was gone. I focused on keeping Maggie safe and the ranch running and just surviving each day. Elena waited, sensing he needed to say this. Then you showed up. And at first it really was just about needing help. But somewhere in these past few weeks, things shifted. He looked at her. I started wanting to come in from work because you'd be there. I started caring whether you smiled at breakfast. I started imagining what it would be like if this was permanent. Caleb, let me finish. His voice was rough. I'm not asking you to replace Sarah. That's not how this works. But I am asking if you could build something new with us. Not a copy of what I had before, but something different. Something that's ours. Elena's heart was racing. That's a lot of responsibility, being part of a family. You're already part of it. You have been since Maggie decided you were hers. He smiled slightly. My daughter has good instincts. What if I'm not good at this? What if I disappoint you? What if you don't? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I'm not asking for perfection, Elena. I'm asking for partnership. Someone who shows up and tries and cares. You're already doing that. Elena looked down at their joined hands. His was rough, scarred from years of ranch work. Hers was smaller but getting tougher, marked by kitchen burns and garden dirt. They fit together surprisingly well. I was so sure I knew what I wanted.
This story was posted on the channel west of Betrayal. Please do not repost it in any form.
Then I got here and nothing went according to plan. Sometimes the best things don't. I'm scared. Me too. Caleb squeezed her hand. But I'd rather be scared and try than safe and alone. Elena looked up at him. In the fading light, his face was all strong lines and honest eyes. This man who'd given her shelter when she was desperate, who defended her to busybodies, who saw past her name to her value. This man who was asking her to stay. Ask me again, she said. What? You said you'd ask again in a month. I'm ready now. Ask me. Caleb's expression shifted, hope and nervousness mixing. Elena Cruz, will you stay? Not as hired help, but as family, as my partner, as someone who belongs here. The words hung in the cooling air. Elena felt the weight of the choice, the enormousness of what he was offering. A home, a purpose, a place where her name didn't make her unsuitable, where her past didn't define her future, where she mattered. Yes, she said, I'll stay. Caleb's smile started slow and spread until it transformed his whole face. He looked younger suddenly, lighter. Yeah? Yeah. He pulled her into a hug, strong and warm and real. Elena let herself lean into it, let herself believe this was actually happening. Thank you, Caleb murmured against her hair. For what? For taking a chance. For seeing what we could be. Elena pulled back enough to look at him. You took the chance first. You offered a job to a stranded stranger. Best decision I ever made. They stood there in the twilight, holding each other, while the ranch settled into evening quiet around them. In the distance, a coyote called. From the house came the faint sound of Maggie singing. This was her life now, this place, these people. Elena let herself feel the full weight of it, the responsibility and the joy tangled together. We should tell Maggie, she said. Tell her what exactly? That I'm staying, really staying. Caleb grinned. She's going to lose her mind. They walked back to the house hand in hand. Inside, Maggie was sprawled on the floor with a picture book. She looked up as they entered. You're holding hands, she observed. Very observant, Caleb said. Does that mean Elena's staying forever now? Elena knelt down beside her. It means I'm staying for as long as you'll have me. Is that all right with you? Maggie launched herself into Elena's arms with enough force to knock them both over. Yes, 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 Caleb laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. Elena held Maggie close, meeting Caleb's eyes over the little girl's head. This was what belonging felt like. Messy and overwhelming and absolutely right. Later, after Maggie had finally gone to bed, too excited to sleep, talking a mile a minute about all the things they'd do now that Elena was staying, Caleb and Elena sat in the parlor with coffee. She's going to be impossible for days, Caleb said, but he was smiling. Worth it. Definitely worth it. He set down his cup. So what happens now? What do you mean? I've never done this before. Building a partnership from scratch. With Sarah, it was traditional, courtship, wedding, then figuring out how to be married. This is different. Elena considered. Maybe different is good. We can make our own rules. Like what? Like honesty, always, even when it's hard. I can do that. And patience. This is new for both of us. We'll make mistakes. Probably lots of them, Elena smiled. And grace, for each other and ourselves. Caleb reached over and took her hand again. The gesture was already becoming familiar. Those are good rules. They sat in comfortable silence, fingers intertwined. Outside, the night was clear now, stars bright after the storm. Elena thought about how much had changed in 5 weeks. She'd arrived with nothing and built this. A place, a purpose, a future. Elena? Caleb's voice was soft. I know we're taking this slow, figuring things out. But I want you to know something. What? You're not just convenient. You're not just good help. He paused, searching for words. You're what I didn't know I was missing, and I'm grateful every damn day that Thomas Garrett was too stupid to see what he had. Elena's throat went tight. That's the second time you've called him stupid. I'll probably call him stupid at least 100 more times. She laughed, a little watery. Fair enough. They talked until late, making plans and sharing stories and slowly building the foundation of what they were becoming. When Elena finally went upstairs, she felt lighter than she had in years. In her room, she pulled out Thomas Garrett's letter one more time. Read those brutal sentences. Your background makes you unsuitable. She thought about burning it now, but instead she folded it carefully and put it back in her trunk. Some things you keep not because they hurt, but because they remind you how far you've traveled, how much you've survived, how wrong people can be about your worth. Elena Cruz had been called unsuitable by a man who didn't deserve her. Now she was building a life with a man who saw exactly what she was worth. That felt like the best kind of revenge. She climbed into bed and fell asleep smiling, already looking forward to tomorrow. The following weeks should have been simple. Elena had said yes. Caleb had asked her to stay. Maggie was thrilled. Everything was settled, except it wasn't. Elena woke one morning in early June with a knot of anxiety in her stomach that hadn't been there the night before. She lay in bed watching dawn light creep across the ceiling, trying to identify the source of her unease. She'd agreed to stay, to be part of this family, to build something permanent, and now the weight of that promise was settling on her shoulders like a physical thing. Downstairs, she moved through the morning routine automatically. Coffee, breakfast, the familiar choreography of keeping a household running. But her mind kept circling back to the same question. What if she'd made a mistake? Caleb noticed at breakfast. You all right? Fine. You're quiet. Just tired? She forced a smile. Didn't sleep well. He looked like he wanted to push, but Maggie chose that moment to spill her milk all over the table. The crisis distracted everyone, and by the time it was cleaned up, Caleb had to get out to the cattle. Elena spent the day working harder than necessary. She scrubbed the already clean kitchen floor, reorganized the pantry, mended clothes that didn't really need mending. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling. But that evening, after Maggie was asleep, Caleb found her in the garden. She was weeding by moonlight, which was both unnecessary and slightly ridiculous. Elena. She didn't look up. Almost done here. It's 9 o'clock at night. The weeds can wait. He crouched beside her. Talk to me. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. You've been weird all day. Avoiding me. Working yourself to death. His voice was gentle. Did I do something? That made her stop. She sat back on her heels, wiping dirt from her hands. No, you didn't do anything. Then what? Elena stared at the dark garden, trying to find words for the fear churning inside her. What if I can't do this? Do what? This. Family. Partnership. What if I'm not? She stopped, frustrated. I don't know how to be part of something permanent, Caleb. Every place I've ever lived, every job I've ever had, it was temporary. I was always ready to leave. That's how I survived. You're not surviving anymore. You're living. What if I don't know the difference? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Can I tell you something? I'm scared too. Elena looked at him. You are? Terrified. I asked you to stay, to be my partner, and half of me keeps waiting for you to realize you made a mistake. That you could do better than a struggling rancher and his needy kid. He smiled without humor. So yeah, I get it. Maggie's not needy. You know what I mean. Elena did. She looked at this man who'd given her everything when she had nothing, who was now admitting his own fears, and felt something shift. I'm afraid I'll disappoint you, she said quietly, that one day you'll wake up and realize I'm not worth the trouble. And I'm afraid you'll leave, that you'll get tired of hard work and tight money and isolation. Caleb reached out and took her hand, dirt and all. But here's what I figure. We can be scared together, or we can be scared alone. I'd rather do it together. What if being scared together isn't enough? Then we'll figure it out. We'll fight and make up and mess things up and try again. That's what partnership is. His grip tightened. But you have to stop running, Elena. You have to actually stay, not just say you will. The words hit like a slap because they were true. She'd said yes to staying, but part of her was still packed and ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. I don't know if I know how to stop, she admitted. Then learn. I'll help. He pulled her to her feet. Come on. Leave the weeds. Come inside. They went back to the house. Caleb made tea while Elena washed the garden dirt from her hands. They sat at the kitchen table, the comfortable space where they'd shared so many meals and conversations. "Tell me about Philadelphia," Caleb said.
This
The real
story was
story,
posted on the channel
not just the
west of
facts, but what
Betrayal.
it felt like.
Please do not
Elena wrapped
repost
her hands
it in
around
any
the warm
form.
cup. She'd never told anyone the full truth. It felt too much like admitting failure. But Caleb was waiting with patient eyes, and she was tired of carrying it alone. "My mother died when I was 8, she began. "My father tried to keep going, but he wasn't built for being a single parent. He drank, lost jobs. We moved constantly, always one step ahead of eviction." She paused. "When I was 12, he left me with my aunt. Said he'd come back when he got settled. Never did." "I'm sorry. Don't be. My aunt took me in, which was more than she had to do, but she never let me forget I was a burden. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every bit of schooling, it all came with a reminder that I owed her." Elena stared into her tea. "So I worked. Cleaned houses, took in sewing, anything to contribute. I saved every penny I could, and when I finally got the position at the school, I thought maybe I'd found something stable. Then the school closed. And I was right back where I started, a burden, a mouth to feed, someone taking up space." She looked at him. "That's when I saw the advertisement. Man seeking bride in Colorado territory. It felt like a way out, a trade. I'd give him my skills and work. He'd give me security and purpose. Clean, simple. But it wasn't. No, because Thomas Garrett wanted a wife who looked right, sounded right, came from the right background, someone who'd make him look good." She heard the bitterness in her voice and tried to smooth it out. "I understand it, actually. He has a business to run, a reputation to maintain. My name didn't fit that picture." Caleb's expression had gone hard. "That's not understanding. That's making excuses for a coward. Maybe, but it taught me something important. I couldn't trust promises, couldn't believe in permanence. The only person I could rely on was myself. And now? Now I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to trust again, how to believe this won't fall apart." She met his eyes. "How to believe you won't change your mind." Caleb set down his cup and leaned forward. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. I don't make promises lightly. When I asked you to stay, when I said I wanted you as my partner, I meant it. Not because you're convenient or because I need help, but because I've watched you for weeks now and I see who you are." He held her gaze. "You're strong. You're smart. You work harder than anyone I know. You're kind to my daughter without being paid extra for it. You defend yourself without being cruel. You've turned this house into a home again. Those are just things I do. They're who you are. And that person, she's worth keeping. She's worth building a life with. So when I say I won't change my mind, I mean it. You're not a burden, Elena. You're a gift I didn't know I needed." Elena's eyes burned. "You can't know that for certain. People change. Circumstances change. You're right. I can't guarantee the future. But I can guarantee that right now, today, I choose you. And I'll keep choosing you tomorrow. And the day after that." He reached across the table and took both her hands. "But you have to choose too. You have to decide whether you're all in or just one foot out the door." "That's not fair. It's completely fair." "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be present, to stop waiting for everything to fall apart and actually try to build something." Elena felt tears spill over. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail, and we figure it out together." His voice gentled. "Elena, you've spent your whole life being ready to run. I'm asking you to stay put, to get messy and make mistakes and trust that I won't throw you out when things get hard." "How do you know you won't?" "Because I've already been through hard. I lost my wife. I nearly lost this ranch. I know what real disaster looks like, and you're not it." He squeezed her hands. "You're the opposite. You're what makes the hard times bearable." Elena sat there, crying quietly, while Caleb held her hands across the kitchen table. She felt split open, raw, terrified, and also, maybe, ready to try. "I don't know if I'm brave enough," she whispered. "You came west with 17 cents and no guarantee. You survived getting rejected and stranded. You built a life from nothing in 5 weeks." Caleb's smile was soft. "You're plenty brave. You just have to point that bravery in a new direction." Toward what? Toward staying, toward us. Elena took a shaky breath. Okay. Okay? I'll try, really try. Not just say I will, but actually do it. She wiped her eyes. But I need you to be patient with me, because I'm going to be bad at this. We'll both be bad at it. That's part of the deal. He stood and pulled her to her feet, then into a hug. We'll figure it out as we go. Elena let herself lean into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. This was real. This man, this place, this chance at something permanent. She could run from it, or she could stay and see what they could build. For the first time in her life, she chose to stay. The next morning, Elena woke with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt before. The anxiety was still there. She suspected it might always be there in some form, but underneath it was something stronger. Determination. She got up and went downstairs to find Caleb already making coffee. He turned when she entered, searching her face. "Morning," he said carefully. Elena walked over and kissed his cheek, quick and deliberate. "Morning." His whole face transformed. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She poured herself coffee. "I'm still scared, but I'm done letting fear make my decisions." "Good," he grinned. "Because I talked to Jim Robertson yesterday. He wants to buy 6 head of cattle and pay up front, cash." "That's wonderful. It's enough to fix the barn roof and buy new equipment, maybe even hire summer help if we need it." He paused. "I was thinking we could use some of it for something else, too." "What?" Caleb looked suddenly nervous. "There's a county dance next month, annual thing, everyone goes. I thought maybe we could go, together, officially." Elena understood what he was really asking. "You want to tell people we're together. I want to stop hiding it. Let folks know you're not just my housekeeper." He rubbed the back of his neck. "If that's all right with you." Elena thought about Mrs. Henderson's pursed lips, about the gossip that would inevitably follow. Then she thought about what Caleb had said last night, about choosing her, about being present. "It's more than all right," she said. "Let them talk." Caleb's smile was worth whatever gossip would come. The weeks leading up to the dance passed in a blur of work and small moments that felt huge. Caleb started touching her casually, a hand on her back as he passed, fingers brushing hers when he handed her something. Elena found herself doing the same, reaching for connection without thinking about it. Maggie noticed, of course. "You and Papa are always touching now." Elena looked up from the bread dough she was kneading. "Does that bother you?" "No, it's nice. It means you're happy." Maggie tilted her head. "Are you going to get married?" "That's a big question for a Tuesday afternoon." "But are you?" Elena considered how to answer. "Your Papa and I are building something together. What shape it takes, we'll figure out as we go." "That's a grown-up way of saying maybe." "You're too smart for your own good." Maggie grinned, pleased with herself. That evening, Elena mentioned the conversation to Caleb. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. It had become their routine, after Maggie went to bed, stealing half an hour of quiet together. "She asked about marriage," Elena said. Caleb's hand tightened on hers. "What did you say?" "That we're figuring things out." Elena glanced at him. "Was that wrong?" "No, it was honest." He was quiet for a moment. "Does the idea scare you? Marriage?" "A little. My only experience with it was watching my parents, and that wasn't exactly inspirational." "Sarah and I—" Caleb paused, choosing words carefully. "We were good together. But it wasn't perfect. We fought about money and work and stupid things. We had to learn how to be partners. It took time." "Do you miss her?" "Every day, but not in the way I used to." He looked at Elena. "At first it was this gaping hole, like part of me was missing. Now it's more like a scar. Still there, still tender sometimes, but healed enough that I can move forward." "Does it feel like betrayal? Moving forward with me?" "No. Sarah would have kicked my ass for moping around for 18 months. She would have wanted Maggie to have a mother figure. She would have wanted me to be happy." He squeezed Elena's hand. "And I think she would have liked you. You're both stubborn as hell." Elena laughed. "That's romantic. I'm being serious. You both have this core of strength, this refusal to give up. When Sarah got sick, she fought right until the end. Never complained, never asked why. Just kept fighting." His voice roughened. "You're like that too. Life knocked you down and you got right back up. I didn't have much choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose to keep going. That takes strength. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, while
This
the
story
sky
was
turned from
posted
gold
on the
to
channel
purple
west
to
of
deep
Betrayal.
blue.
Please do not
Elena thought
repost
about
it in any
marriage,
form.
about permanence, about what it would mean to fully commit to this life. Ask me again in a few months, she said finally. Caleb looked at her. Ask you what? About marriage. After the dance. After we've been public. After you've had more time to be sure. I'm already sure. Then humor me. Let me catch up to where you are. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Fair enough. The night of the county dance arrived with unseasonably cool weather and clear skies. Elena dressed in her best outfit, a dark green dress she'd brought from Philadelphia, one of the few nice things she owned. She pinned her hair up, put on the small silver earrings that had been her mother's, and studied herself in the mirror. She looked different than she had 2 months ago. Her skin was darker from outdoor work. Her hands were rougher, but her eyes were steadier, more settled. Downstairs, Caleb was helping Maggie with her shoes. He looked up when Elena appeared and went completely still. You look beautiful, he said. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. He was wearing a pressed shirt and vest, his hair combed back, boots polished. He looked like a man ready to make a statement. The dance was held in the town hall, a large wooden building that had been decorated with bunting and lanterns. Music spilled out into the street. Half the county seemed to be there, crowding in with noise and laughter. Elena felt her stomach clench as they approached. This was it. The moment they stopped pretending this was just an employer-employee arrangement, Caleb must have sensed her hesitation because he took her hand firmly. Together, he said. Together, Elena agreed. They walked in holding hands, Maggie skipping ahead. Conversations paused, heads turned. Elena felt the weight of dozens of eyes assessing, judging, gossiping. Then Mrs. Crawford appeared, smiling warmly. Caleb, Elena, I'm so glad you made it. Her loud greeting broke the awkward silence. People went back to their conversations, though Elena caught plenty of sidelong glances. Ignore them, Mrs. Crawford said quietly. They'll have something new to talk about by next week. Thank you, Elena murmured. The evening progressed in a blur. There was food, tables groaning with dishes brought by every family, music, a local band playing fiddle and guitar, dancing, couples spinning across the floor while children ran wild around the edges. Elena danced with Caleb, feeling self-conscious at first, but gradually relaxing into it. He was a decent dancer, better than she'd expected. They moved together easily, finding a rhythm. Not so bad, right? He said. The dancing or the public declaration? Both. Ask me later when I haven't had wine. He laughed and spun her out and back in. Elena caught Maggie watching them with pure joy on her face and felt something warm bloom in her chest. Midway through the evening, Thomas Garrett appeared. Elena saw him across the room talking to a group of merchants. He spotted her and Caleb, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or regret. Want to leave? Caleb asked quietly. Elena looked at Thomas Garrett, this man who'd rejected her, who'd called her unsuitable. Then she looked at Caleb, who'd given her everything without asking where she came from or what her name meant. No, she said, I want to dance. They danced 3 more songs, and when Thomas Garrett approached during a break, Elena faced him with her head high. Miss Cruz, he said. You're looking well? Thank you. I heard you're working for Caleb. I am. Garrett's eyes flicked to Caleb, then back. I wanted to apologize for how I handled things. It was cowardly, Caleb supplied. Garrett flushed. Poorly done. I should have been honest from the start about my reservations. Your reservations about my heritage? Elena said calmly. Let's be clear about what you're apologizing for. Yes, that. Garrett looked genuinely uncomfortable. I let other people's opinions matter more than my own judgment. It was wrong. Elena studied him. He seemed sincere, but sincerity didn't undo the damage. Thank you for the apology, but I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, so I'm not sure it matters anymore. Still, I wanted you to know. He tipped his hat. Enjoy the evening. After he left, Caleb said, You handled that well. I meant what I said. I am where I'm supposed to be. Elena looked up at him. Strange how things work out. Not strange, just right. They danced until late, until Maggie was asleep on Elena's shoulder and the crowd had thinned. Riding home under a sky full of stars, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of fear or doubt, but something deeper. The sense that she was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Caleb carried Maggie inside while Elena put away the wagon. When she came in, he was waiting in the kitchen. Thank you, he said, for tonight, for being brave. Thank you for making it worth being brave for. He crossed the room and cupped her face in his hands. I'm going to ask you something, and you can say no. But I need to ask. Elena's heart hammered. What? Can I kiss you? She'd been wondering when he'd ask, when they'd cross this line. The answer came easily. Yes. He kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious. Elena let herself fall into it, into him, into this moment that felt like a promise. When they broke apart, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said quietly. I know it's fast. I know you might not be there yet, but I needed you to know. Elena's breath caught. 3 words that changed everything. She stopped, fear rising. What if she said it back and jinxed everything? What if admitting how much she cared made it all fall apart? Caleb kissed her forehead. You don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know where I stand. Caleb, it's all right, Elena. Really. He smiled, though something in his eyes looked vulnerable. Get some rest. We've got early chores tomorrow. He left her standing in the kitchen, and Elena felt like she'd failed some crucial test. Upstairs, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. He'd said he loved her, and she'd frozen. Why? Because saying it back felt like giving up the last piece of armor she had. Because love meant vulnerability. Because every time she'd cared about something, it had been taken away. But Caleb wasn't taking. He was giving. He'd given her shelter, purpose, family. He'd defended her, chosen her, asked her to stay. And she'd just stood there like an idiot instead of telling him the truth. The truth was, she did love him. She loved his patience with Maggie, his quiet strength, the way he looked at her like she mattered. She loved this life they were building, this ranch that was becoming home. She loved him, and she was too scared to say it. Elena got out of bed and padded downstairs. Caleb's door was closed, a strip of light showing underneath. She knocked softly. Come in. He was sitting on the bed, still dressed, looking at a photograph. Elena recognized it. Caleb and Sarah on their wedding day, both young and happy. I'm sorry, she said, for interrupting. You're not interrupting. He set the photograph aside. Can't sleep? No. Elena closed the door behind her and sat on the edge of the bed. I need to tell you something. All right. When you said you loved me, I froze. Not because I don't feel the same way, but because I'm terrified of admitting it. She looked at him. Every time I've cared about something, it's been taken away. My mother died. My father left. My aunt tolerated me. The school closed. Thomas Garrett rejected me. I've learned that caring too much is dangerous. Caleb was quiet, listening. But then you came along, Elena continued. You and Maggie. And suddenly I cared again, more than I wanted to. I tried not to. I really did. I told myself it was just a job, just temporary. But it's not temporary, is it? No? It's real and permanent and terrifying. And I do love you, Caleb. I love you and Maggie and this ranch and this life. I love it so much it scares me. He reached out and pulled her into his lap, holding her close. Love is supposed to be a little scary. This is more than a little. I know. But it's also worth it. He kissed her temple. Thank you for telling me, for being honest. Elena wrapped her arms around him. I'm going to be bad at this. I'm going to panic and doubt and probably try to run a few more times. I know, and I'll be bad at it too. I'll get stubborn and closed off and forget to talk about how I'm feeling. He pulled back to look at her. But we'll figure it out. Together. Together, Elena agreed. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other while the night settled around them. Eventually, Elena stood to leave, but Caleb caught her hand. Stay, he said. just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight.
This story
Elena
was
hesitated,
posted on the
then
channel
nodded.
West of
She
Betrayal.
climbed under the covers,
Please do
still
not
in her
repost
dress,
it in
and
any
Caleb
form.
lay down beside her, fully clothed. They held hands in the darkness, two people trying to be brave enough for love. Caleb? Elena whispered. Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me. His hand tightened on hers. Never. Elena fell asleep feeling safer than she'd felt in years, held by someone who saw all her fear and chose her anyway. In the morning, Maggie found them asleep together and crowed with delight. I knew it! I told Clara the chicken you were in love! Caleb groaned and buried his face in the pillow. Elena laughed, fully awake now, embarrassed, but not regretful. Go start breakfast, Magpie, Caleb mumbled. We'll be down in a minute. After Maggie thundered downstairs, they lay there looking at each other in the morning light. No going back now, Elena said. Good. I don't want to go back. They got up and dressed and went downstairs to face whatever came next. Together, like they'd promised. And for the first time in her life, Elena believed the promise might actually hold. The days after the dance should have been easy. They'd made their relationship public. Elena had finally said she loved him. Maggie was ecstatic. Everything was moving in the right direction. But life on a ranch didn't care about perfect timing. 2 weeks later, Elena woke to Caleb shaking her shoulder in the pre-dawn darkness. Get up, he said quietly. Something's wrong with the cattle. She was out of bed in seconds, pulling on clothes. What happened? Don't know yet. Jim Robertson rode over, said he saw lights moving on my north pasture last night. Could be nothing. Could be rustlers. Elena's stomach dropped. Cattle rustling wasn't uncommon in Colorado territory, but it was the kind of problem that could destroy a ranch overnight. They rode out as the sun was rising, Caleb tense beside her. The north pasture was their largest, home to almost 40 head of cattle that represented most of Caleb's herd. When they reached it, Elena's worst fears were confirmed. The fence had been cut in 2 places. The pasture was empty. Caleb sat on his horse, face white, looking at the destruction. For a long moment, he didn't speak. How many? Elena asked quietly. All of them. 42 head. His voice was hollow. That's everything. That's the whole herd I was planning to sell next month. Elena felt ice in her veins. 42 cattle at market price would have been enough to see them through winter with money left over for improvements. Without them, the ranch was in serious trouble. We need to report this, she said. Get the sheriff. Caleb nodded mechanically. Yeah. They rode back in silence. Elena watched him from the corner of her eye, seeing him withdraw into himself. She recognized it, the same shutdown she'd seen that first day, when he'd been barely holding on. Back at the house, Maggie was eating breakfast, oblivious to the crisis. Caleb forced a smile for her. Morning, Magpie. Papa, Elena, are the cows okay? They're fine, sweetheart. The lie came easily. Eat up, you've got reading practice today. After Caleb left for town to find the sheriff, Elena kept Maggie occupied with lessons, but her mind was racing, calculating numbers, trying to figure out how they'd survive this. The ledgers upstairs told a stark story. Without the cattle sale, they had maybe 3 months before they'd be in serious debt. Less if something else went wrong. Caleb returned late afternoon with Sheriff Cole, a grizzled man in his 50s who looked like he'd seen too much. I'll do what I can, the sheriff said, examining the cut fence.
This story was posted on the channel West of Betrayal.
They hit fast and scatter
Please
the
do not
cattle to
repost
different
it
buyers.
in any form.
By the time we track them down, the evidence is gone. So that's it? Caleb's voice was tight. 42 head of cattle just gone? I didn't say that. I said it's hard. We'll put the word out, check with buyers in neighboring counties. But I won't lie to you, Caleb. Odds aren't good. After the sheriff left, Caleb stood in the pasture staring at nothing. Elena came up beside him. We'll figure this out, she said. How? That was our livelihood. That was everything. We'll find a way. We always do. He looked at her, and she saw something that scared her. Hopelessness. Maybe you should leave. Elena felt like she'd been punched. What? This ranch is dying, Elena. I can't pay you. Hell, I can barely feed us. You'd be better off somewhere else. Don't. Her voice shook. Don't you dare push me away. I'm being practical. You're being a coward. Elena grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. You think I stayed for the money? You think I fell in love with you because the ranch was profitable? I can't give you the life I promised. You promised me partnership. That means bad times too. She held his gaze. I'm not leaving, Caleb. So stop trying to make me. Something cracked in his expression. He pulled her into his arms, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. I don't know what to do, he said against her hair. I don't know how to fix this. Then we'll figure it out together. Elena pulled back. Come on, let's look at the books. Maybe there's something we're missing. They spent the evening hunched over the ledgers while Maggie played nearby. The numbers were grim, but not completely hopeless. We have the payment from Jim Robertson, Elena said. That'll cover supplies for 2 months. And you said the Crawfords owe you for hay delivery. That's small money. Small money adds up, Elena made notes. What about selling some equipment, that old plow you never use? Might get $50 for it. Every bit helps. She thought hard. What if we diversified? Chickens lay eggs we could sell. We've got that empty field. We could plant vegetables, sell them in town. Caleb looked at her like she was speaking another language. You want to turn us into a farm? I want to turn us into whatever keeps us afloat. Elena met his eyes. Unless you have a better idea. He didn't. So over the next week, they shifted strategy. Elena threw herself into building up their chicken flock, buying new hens with money scraped from the emergency fund. She planted vegetables, beans, squash, potatoes, working the field until her back ached. Caleb sold the old equipment and used the money to repair fences and improve their remaining stock. Maggie helped where she could, feeding chickens and pulling weeds. She didn't understand the full crisis, but she sensed the tension and tried to lighten it with her chatter. The work was brutal. Elena was up before dawn and working past dark. Her hands blistered, her shoulders screamed. But she kept going because stopping meant admitting defeat. 3 weeks after the rustling, Caleb found her in the vegetable field at dusk. She was on her knees, pulling weeds with mechanical determination. Elena, stop. Almost done with this row. Stop! He pulled her to her feet. Look at yourself. You're exhausted. I'm fine. You're not fine. You've been working yourself to death. Elena pulled away. Someone has to. Not like this. Not at the expense of your health. We don't have a choice, Mao. Yes, we do. Caleb took her shoulders gently. We can pace ourselves, take breaks, ask for help. From who? Everyone's struggling. From the community. Mrs. Crawford offered to take Maggie a few days a week so you'd have time to breathe. Jim Robertson said he'd help with the heavy field work. Elena's throat tightened. Why would they do that? Because they're neighbors. Because that's what people do out here. They help each other. He brushed dirt from her cheek. You're so used to doing everything alone, you forgot what it's like to have people on your side. The words broke something open inside her. Elena sagged against him, suddenly aware of how tired she was, how much she'd been carrying. I'm scared, she whispered. What if we lose everything? Then we lose it together, and we start over. He held her close. But we're not there yet. We're still fighting. We just need to fight smarter, not harder. Over the following days, Elena learned to accept help. Mrs. Crawford did take Maggie twice a week, giving Elena breathing room. Jim Robertson came by to help plow the far field. Even Alice Porter, the schoolteacher, stopped by with preserves and bread. Heard you were having a tough season, Alice said. Thought you could use this. Elena's pride wanted to refuse, but she forced herself to accept gracefully. Thank you. That's very kind. We take care of our own out here. Alice smiled. And you're one of us now, whether you like it or not. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. For the first time, Elena felt like she belonged to something bigger than herself. The vegetable harvest in late July was modest but real. Elena loaded baskets of beans and squash and brought them to town. She set up a small stand near the general store, feeling self-conscious. Within an hour, she'd sold out. This squash is beautiful, one customer said. You growing this yourself? Yes, ma'am. I'll take 6 next week if you have them. Elena went home with actual money and a list of orders. That night at dinner, she showed Caleb the cash. $32, she said, from vegetables. He stared at the money. That's almost what I'd make on 2 head of cattle. And we can grow more vegetables, all season long. Something shifted in Caleb's expression.
This
The
story was
hopelessness
posted on the
receding
channel West of
slightly. You
Betrayal.
really think we can make
Please
this
do not
work?
repost it in any
I
form.
think we have to try. They kept trying. Elena expanded the vegetable operation. Caleb picked up odd jobs, fence repair for neighbors, equipment maintenance. Every dollar went into keeping the ranch afloat. It was hard, grinding work. They fought about money, about priorities, about how much risk to take. Elena learned that Caleb got quiet when he was stressed, withdrawing into himself. Caleb learned that Elena worked herself sick rather than admit she was overwhelmed. One night in early August, they had their worst fight yet. Caleb wanted to sell their last breeding cow to cover immediate expenses. Elena argued they needed to keep her for future stock. "We won't have a future if we can't eat this winter," Caleb said. "And we won't rebuild the herd if we sell everything," Elena shot back. "Maybe there is no rebuilding. Maybe we accept that ranching's done and move on." Elena felt her temper snap. "So you're just giving up? That's your solution?" "I'm being realistic. You're being defeated. There's a difference." "Easy for you to say. This isn't your family's legacy on the line." The words hung in the air, ugly and hurtful. Caleb's face went white as soon as he said them. "I didn't mean—" But Elena was already walking away, out the door and into the night. She made it to the barn before the tears came. She collapsed on a hay bale, crying from exhaustion and frustration and hurt. This wasn't her legacy. She knew that. She'd only been here 3 months. She didn't have generations of family history tied to this land. But it felt like hers anyway. She'd bled for this place, worked until her hands were raw. She loved this ranch, this life, this family. And Caleb had just thrown it in her face that she didn't really belong. She heard footsteps and knew without looking it was him. "Go away." "No." Caleb sat beside her. "I'm sorry, that was a shitty thing to say." "It was true though, wasn't it? This isn't my legacy. I'm just— You're my partner. This is your legacy as much as mine now." He took her hand. "I said it because I'm scared. Because selling that cow feels like admitting my grandfather and father built something I couldn't keep going. But that's not your fault. And I shouldn't have taken it out on you." Elena wiped her eyes. "I'm scared too. I'm terrified we're going to work ourselves to death and still lose everything." Then we're both terrified together. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Elena said, "Don't shut me out when you're stressed. It makes me feel like you don't trust me." "I know. I'm sorry. Old habit from doing everything alone. And I'll try not to work myself sick. Deal?" "Deal." He kissed her temple. "About the cow. What if we compromise? We keep her, but I take that construction job in town that Mr. Henderson offered. It's 3 weeks of work, decent pay." Elena considered. "That means you'd be gone during the day." "I know. Can you manage?" "I'll have to. We need the money." So Caleb took the construction job, leaving before dawn and coming home after dark. Elena managed the ranch alone with Maggie's help. It was exhausting, but she refused to complain. They needed this. 2 weeks into the job, disaster struck again. Elena woke to Maggie crying in the night. "Mama, I don't feel good." It took Elena a second to register that Maggie had called her mama, but she pushed that aside. The little girl was burning with fever. Elena spent the night trying to bring the fever down with cool cloths and water. By morning, Maggie was worse, delirious and struggling to breathe. She had to get Caleb, but he was in town, and she couldn't leave Maggie alone.
This story was posted
Elena
on the
made a
channel
decision.
West of Betrayal.
She wrapped Maggie
Please
in
do not
blankets,
repost
pitched
it
the
in
wagon
any
with
form.
shaking hands, and drove to town at dangerous speed. She found Caleb at the construction site and nearly collapsed with relief. He took one look at Maggie and went pale. "Doc Miller's office. Now." The doctor examined Maggie while Elena and Caleb waited, holding each other's hands tight enough to hurt. "Pneumonia," Dr. Miller said finally. "She needs rest and medicine. I'll give you what you need, but you have to keep her warm and hydrated. Next week is critical." The medicine cost $15, money they didn't have. Caleb paid it anyway. Back home, they set up a sickbed in the parlor where they could watch Maggie constantly. Caleb quit the construction job to help. For 3 days, Maggie drifted in and out of fever while they took turns sitting with her. Elena had never been so scared. She'd lost her mother young. She couldn't lose Maggie too. On the 4th night, Maggie's fever finally broke. She woke up weak but lucid. "Mama?" she whispered. Elena burst into tears. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I'm thirsty." "I'll get water. Caleb, she's asking for water." Caleb appeared, haggard but grinning. "That's a good sign. That's a great sign." They got through the crisis. Maggie recovered slowly, getting stronger each day, and something had shifted. Maggie had called Elena Mama, and neither of them had corrected her. It felt right. 2 weeks later, when Maggie was finally well enough to get out of bed, Elena and Caleb sat her down for a talk. "Magpie," Caleb started, "you've been calling Elena Mama." Maggie nodded, suddenly worried. "Is that wrong?" "No." Elena took her hand. "But I want to make sure you understand what it means. Your first mama, Sarah, she loved you very much. She'll always be your mama." "I know. I remember her a little." Maggie's voice was small. "But you take care of me now. You read to me and teach me and make me feel better when I'm sick. That's what mamas do." Elena's throat closed up. "I would be honored if you called me mama. As long as you know Sarah was your mama too. You can have both." Maggie threw her arms around Elena. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, sweetheart." Caleb watched them, eyes suspiciously bright. Later, when Maggie was asleep, he found Elena in the kitchen. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For loving her like she's yours. For not trying to replace Sarah but still being everything Maggie needs." He pulled Elena close. "You're an incredible mother." Elena leaned into him. "I never thought I'd be a mother, never planned for it." Best things are usually unplanned. They stood together in the quiet kitchen, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. She was a mother now. She had a daughter, a family. The ranch was still struggling, money was still tight, but they had each other. That had to count for something. September brought the first frost and a letter from the sheriff. They'd recovered 6 head of cattle from a buyer 2 counties over. It wasn't much, but it was something. More importantly, the vegetable sales had been strong. Elena had saved $200 over the summer. Combined with Caleb's construction wages and the recovered cattle, they were going to make it through winter. Barely. But they'd make it. One evening, as they worked on next year's planting plan, Caleb said, "I've been thinking." "About?" "About us. About making this official." Elena looked up from the ledger. "Official how?" "Marriage." He said it simply, directly. "I know you said to ask you after the dance, after we'd been public. Well, it's been months. We've been through hell together, and I still want to marry you, if you'll have me." Elena set down her pen. Her heart was racing. "Is this a proposal?" "It's a very bad proposal, yeah." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't have a ring. I'm not on one knee. We're sitting at a kitchen table covered in account books. But I love you, Elena. I want you to be my wife. I want to make this permanent in every way possible." Elena thought about everything they'd been through. The cattle rustling, the poverty, the sickness, the fights. All the hard, ugly, real parts of building a life together. And she thought about the good parts. The quiet mornings. Maggie calling her mama. The way Caleb looked at her like she hung the moon. The community they'd built. The home they'd created. "Yes," she said. Caleb blinked. "Yeah?" "Yes, I'll marry you." Elena smiled. Even without the ring or the knee or the romantic setting. Yes. He yanked her into his arms, kissing her hard. "Thank you," he said between kisses. "Thank you. For agreeing to marry you. For staying. For fighting. For choosing us even when it got hard." Elena pulled back to look at him. "You make it sound like I had a choice." "You always had a choice." "No. The choice was made the day I got here. I just took a while to accept it." She touched his face. "You're it for me, Caleb Hale. You and Maggie. This ranch, this life. I'm all in." "Good. Because I'm never letting you go." They sat together planning a simple wedding for November, after harvest but before the heavy snows. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends, maybe at the Crawford Ranch. Maggie was over the moon when they told her. "I get to be in the wedding?" "You're going to stand with us," Elena said. "Because you're part of this too." "Can I wear a fancy dress?" "The fanciest dress we can manage." They spent the next weeks preparing. Elena sewed in the evenings. making herself a simple wedding dress and altering one of Sarah's old dresses for Maggie. Caleb cleaned up the ranch, fixing every small thing that had fallen into disrepair. The community rallied around them. Mrs. Crawford offered her house for the ceremony. Alice Porter volunteered to make the cake. Jim Robertson and the other ranchers promised to bring food. It felt like the whole county was invested in their happiness, and Elena couldn't quite believe it. She'd gone from being stranded and alone to being part of something bigger, to mattering to people. A week before the wedding, Elena was in town buying ribbon when she ran into Virginia Henderson, the woman who'd judged her so harshly at the party. "Miss Cruz," Mrs. Henderson said, "I heard congratulations are in order." "Thank you. I must admit, I had my doubts when you first arrived. A woman alone, no family, moving into a bachelor's home." Mrs. Henderson's expression was complicated. "But I was wrong. You've been good for Caleb and that little girl. The whole county can see it." Elena didn't know what to say. "That's very kind of you." "Not kind, just honest." Mrs. Henderson smiled slightly. "I hope you'll be very happy together." After she left, Elena stood on the sidewalk, feeling strange. She'd been so certain people would always judge her, always find her unsuitable. But here was Mrs. Henderson, the most judgmental person she knew, offering genuine blessing. Maybe she really did belong here after all. The night before the wedding, Elena couldn't sleep. She went downstairs to find Caleb already awake, sitting at the kitchen table. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little. You?" "Terrified." He grinned. "Good terrified, though." Elena sat beside him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think Sarah would approve of us?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "I think she'd be happy I found someone who makes me laugh again, who takes care of Maggie like she's her own, who fights for this family like her life depends on it." He took Elena's hand. "Sarah was practical. She'd see that you're good for us, and that would be enough. I wish I could have known her. She would have liked you. You're both stubborn and smart and terrible at asking for help." He squeezed her hand. "And she would have appreciated that you're not trying to be her, that you're being yourself." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm ready for tomorrow." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Let's make this official." They sat together until dawn, talking and planning and stealing kisses like teenagers. By the time the sun rose, Elena felt certain and calm. This was right. This was where she belonged. And tomorrow, she'd marry the man who'd seen past every wall she'd built and loved her anyway. The morning of the wedding arrived cold and clear, the kind of November day that promised snow by evening. Elena woke early in the guest room at the Crawford Ranch, where she'd spent the night according to tradition. Through the window, she could see the mountains sharp against the pale sky, and for a moment she let herself just breathe. Today, she was getting married. 6 months ago, she'd been stranded at a train station with 17 cents and nowhere to go. Now she had a family, a home, a future. The distance between those two moments felt impossible, like it had happened to someone else entirely. Mrs. Crawford knocked softly and entered with coffee. "How are you feeling?" "Like I might throw up." "That's normal." Mrs. Crawford smiled. "I was sick as a dog before my wedding. Couldn't keep anything down until after the ceremony." Elena sipped the coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. "What if I mess this up?" "Mess what up? The vows? The ceremony?" "All of it. Marriage, being a wife, being Maggie's mother." Elena set down the cup.
This story was posted on the channel
Mrs.
West
Crawford
of Betrayal.
sat beside her on
Please
the bed.
do not repost
Can I tell you
it in any
something?
form.
Nobody's good at marriage when they start. You figure it out as you go, making mistakes and fixing them and learning what works. The only way to mess it up is to stop trying. That doesn't make me feel better. It's not supposed to make you feel better. It's supposed to make you realistic. Mrs. Crawford squeezed her hand. Caleb's not expecting perfection. He's expecting partnership. You've already proven you can do that. Elena thought about the past months, the cattle rustling, the poverty, Maggie's illness, all the fights and reconciliations and hard-won trust. They'd survived worse than wedding jitters. "You're right," she said. "I'm being ridiculous. You're being human. Now get dressed. We've got a wedding to prepare." The ceremony was planned for 2 o'clock in the Crawford parlor. Alice Porter arrived early to help with Elena's hair, pinning it up and weaving in small white flowers she'd preserved from summer. "You look beautiful," Alice said, stepping back to admire her work. Elena studied herself in the mirror. The dress she'd made was simple, cream-colored cotton with long sleeves and a high collar, but it fit well and made her look like someone who belonged in a wedding. Her mother's silver earrings caught the light. She looked nervous but determined, which felt about right. Downstairs, she could hear people arriving. Voices and laughter filtered up through the floorboards. The community coming together to witness two people make promises. Maggie burst into the room, spinning in her altered dress. "Mama, look! Mrs. Crawford put flowers in my hair, too." Elena's heart clenched at the word mama, the way it still did every time. "You look perfect, sweetheart." "Are you scared?" "A little." "Don't be. Papa loves you so much. He told me this morning that marrying you was the best decision he ever made, even before he made it." Elena laughed despite her nerves. "That doesn't make sense." "That's what I said. But Papa said love doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be true." There was a knock, and Mrs. Crawford appeared. "It's time." Elena's stomach flipped. She took Maggie's hand, squeezed once for courage, and went downstairs. The parlor had been transformed. Chairs lined the walls, filled with familiar faces: Jim Robertson and his wife, Alice Porter, the Hendersons, a dozen other ranchers and townspeople. Someone had brought in pine branches that filled the room with the smell of forest. And at the front, next to the minister, stood Caleb. He was wearing a suit Elena had never seen before, probably borrowed, because they certainly couldn't afford new clothes. His hair was combed back, his face freshly shaved. When he saw her, his whole expression transformed into something that made Elena's throat tight. She walked toward him with Maggie at her side, aware of everyone watching but only seeing him. When she reached the front, Caleb took her hand. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "You clean up okay yourself." Maggie giggled. The minister cleared his throat and began. Elena barely heard the words. She was too focused on Caleb's face, on the way his thumb rubbed circles on her hand, on the reality of this moment. They were doing this, making it official, promising forever. When it came time for vows, Caleb went first. His voice was steady but rough with emotion. "Elena, 6 months ago, you showed up in my life when I'd given up on most things mattering. You could have walked away 100 times. Probably should have walked away. But you stayed. You fought for us when I was too tired to fight for myself. You loved my daughter like she was yours. You turned a house into a home." He paused. "I'm not promising you easy. We both know life's too hard for that. But I'm promising you partnership, honesty, that I'll choose you every day for the rest of my life. That's all I've got, but it's yours." Elena's vision blurred. She blinked hard and found her voice. "Caleb, I came west looking for security, for a practical arrangement, for someone who'd give me a defined role and clear expectations." She smiled through tears. "I got none of that. What I got was chaos and cattle rustling and poverty and a 6-year-old who decided I belonged here before I knew it myself. What I got was harder than anything I imagined." She squeezed his hands. "But I also got love. Real love. The messy kind that doesn't give up when things get bad. I got a partner who sees me, really sees me, and chooses me anyway. I got a family. So I'm promising you the same thing you promised me. I'll show up. I'll fight. I'll choose you and Maggie every single day, for better or worse, and we've already had plenty of both." Caleb's eyes were suspiciously bright. Maggie was openly crying, though Elena suspected she didn't fully understand why. The minister pronounced them married. Caleb kissed her, soft and certain, while everyone applauded. Then Maggie threw herself at both of them, and they stood there in a family embrace that felt like the most natural thing in the world. The reception was simple: food brought by neighbors, music from Jim Robertson's fiddle, dancing in the cleared parlor. Elena danced with Caleb, with Maggie, with half the men in the county who wanted to congratulate the bride. At one point, she found herself near the refreshment table, catching her breath when Thomas Garrett approached. She hadn't known he was invited, but someone must have asked him. "Mrs. Hale," he said, "congratulations." Elena was surprised the name didn't feel strange. Mrs. Hale. She was married now. "Thank you. I wanted to apologize again." More formally. He looked uncomfortable but sincere. "I let fear guide my decisions. Fear of what people would think, of how it would look. of stepping outside what was expected. And in doing so, I lost something valuable before I even knew what it was worth. Elena studied him. He looked older somehow, tired. I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand something. You didn't lose anything. You never had me. You had an idea of me based on letters, and when the reality didn't match your expectations, you ran. She kept her voice gentle. That's on you, not on me. I know that now. Good. Because I spent too long thinking I was the problem, that my background made me unsuitable, like your letter said. It took Caleb to show me that the right person doesn't need you to be anything other than who you are. Garrett nodded slowly. He's a lucky man. We're both lucky. That's how partnership works. After he left, Caleb appeared at her elbow. What did he want? To apologize. Again. And I let him. Then I told him the truth, that he never really had a chance at what we have. Elena looked at her husband, still getting used to that word. Because what we have is built on actually knowing each other, on seeing the worst and choosing to stay anyway. Caleb pulled her close. Damn right. They danced until late, until Maggie was asleep on a chair and the crowd had thinned. Finally, Mrs. Crawford shooed them out. Go home, she said. I'll keep Maggie tonight. You two need time alone. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them tired but content. Snow had started falling, light flakes that caught in Elena's hair. Caleb kept glancing at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. What? Elena asked finally. Nothing, just thinking about how different everything is from 6 months ago. Better different or worse different? So much better it's not even close. He helped her down from the wagon. Come on, Mrs. Hale. Let's go home. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. They'd left lamps burning, and the kitchen table still had the remnants of yesterday's planning scattered across it, evidence of their life together. Caleb built up the fire while Elena changed out of her wedding dress, carefully hanging it up. When she came back downstairs in regular clothes, he'd made tea and was sitting by the fire looking contemplative. You all right? She asked, settling beside him. Yeah, just thinking about Sarah. Elena tensed slightly. Oh? Not in a bad way, just, I think she'd be happy about today. About us. He looked at Elena. I loved her. I'll always love her. But what I feel for you is different, not better or worse, just different. Does that make sense? It does. I used to feel guilty about it, like loving you meant betraying her memory, but I don't think that anymore. He took Elena's hand. I think hearts are bigger than we give them credit for. There's room for both. Elena leaned against him. I'm glad you can talk about her. I don't want you to feel like that part of your life is off limits. It's not. She's part of my history, part of what made me who I am. But you're my present and my future. He kissed her forehead. And I'm grateful for both. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire and the snow falling outside. Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here, the rejection, the fear, the slow building of trust. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been necessary. Can I tell you something? She said quietly. Always. When I got that letter from Thomas Garrett, the one that said I was unsuitable, I wanted to die. Not literally, but close. I felt like the world had confirmed what I'd always suspected, that I wasn't enough, that my background, my name, my history made me fundamentally unworthy of love or belonging. Caleb's arm tightened around her. But then I met you, and you never asked about my background. You asked if I could work, if I was honest, if I was willing to try.
This story was posted on the channel West of Betrayal.
You saw my
Please
value,
do not repost
not
it
in spite
any
of who I
form.
was, but because of it. She turned to look at him. You taught me that worth isn't about where you come from. It's about what you do with where you end up. You taught me something too, Caleb said. You taught me that it's okay to need people, that asking for help isn't weakness, that building something new doesn't mean forgetting what you lost. He smiled. We've been pretty good teachers for each other. We have. So what do we teach Maggie? Elena considered. That family isn't just blood. That home is where you build it. That the life you plan for isn't always the one you need. That's good. Let's teach her that. They went to bed eventually, wrapped around each other in the room that was now theirs, officially. Elena lay awake for a while, listening to Caleb breathe, feeling the weight of his arm across her waist. This was her life now, this man, this ranch, this hard, beautiful existence. She'd come west looking for security and found something better, purpose, partnership, love that didn't require her to be anything other than herself. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined as a girl. It was better than that. It was real. The next morning, they collected Maggie from the Crawford Ranch. She was full of questions about the wedding, about being married, about what changed now. "Nothing changes," Caleb said. "We're still the same family we were yesterday." "But now it's official," Maggie said. "Now Elena's really truly my mama forever." "I was really truly your mama before," Elena said. "The ceremony just made it legal." "Good, because I don't want you to ever leave." "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. You're stuck with me." Maggie beamed and skipped ahead to the wagon. Caleb pulled Elena aside. "You ready for this? Forever with us?" Elena looked at him, at Maggie, at the mountains rising in the distance. "I've been ready since the day I decided to stay. I just needed time to admit it. And now I'm all in. No more doubts, no more escape plans. This is my life, and I choose it." Caleb kissed her thoroughly. "Good, because I'm holding you to that." The winter that followed was hard. Money was still tight, snow piled high, making every chore twice as difficult. They lost 2 chickens to a fox. The roof leaked in the back bedroom, but they managed, working together, supporting each other through the difficult days. Elena learned to read Caleb's moods, to know when he needed space and when he needed company. Caleb learned to notice when Elena was pushing too hard, to remind her to rest. Maggie learned that family meant showing up even when things were hard, that love wasn't just the easy moments, but the difficult ones too. In January, a letter came from the sheriff. They'd recovered another 8 head of cattle and arrested the rustlers. Not enough to rebuild the full herd, but enough to give them a fighting chance. 14 cattle total, Caleb said, reading the letter. Plus what we can buy this spring with the vegetable money. We might actually pull this off. "We will pull this off," Elena corrected. "No might about it." February brought Maggie's 7th birthday. They celebrated with a small party, just the Crawfords and Robertsons and Alice Porter. Maggie got a new dress from Mrs. Crawford, a book from Alice, and a hand-carved horse from her father. "What did Mama get me?" Maggie asked. Elena produced a small package. Inside was a silver locket, simple but beautiful. "It was my mother's," Elena explained. "And now it's yours. When you're older, you can put pictures inside, pictures of the people you love." Maggie threw herself at Elena. "I love it. I love you. I love you too, Magpie." Watching them, Caleb felt his throat tighten. His daughter had a mother again. Not a replacement for Sarah, but someone who loved her just as fiercely. That was all he'd wanted when he'd offered Elena a job 6 months ago, someone to care for Maggie. He'd gotten so much more than that. March arrived with the first hints of spring. The snow began to melt, revealing the muddy chaos underneath. Elena started planning the expanded vegetable garden while Caleb worked on repairing winter damage. One evening, sitting at the kitchen table with ledgers spread between them, Elena said, "I've been thinking." "About?" "The future. Long-term planning." She pointed at her notes. "If the cattle sell well this fall, and if the vegetables do as well as last year, we could be out of debt by this time next year." Caleb studied the numbers. "That's optimistic." "It's possible. And if we're smart, if we keep diversifying, keep building relationships with buyers, we might even start turning a real profit." "You sound like a businesswoman." "I am a businesswoman. Just happens my business is a ranch." Elena looked at him. "This place has potential, Caleb. We just have to be willing to do things differently than your father and grandfather did. They were cattle ranchers. That's all they knew. And there's nothing wrong with that. But times are changing. The market's changing. We have to change with it, or get left behind." Caleb was quiet, thinking. Then he said, "You know what I love about you? My stunning good looks? Besides that," he grinned, "you're not afraid to challenge the way things have always been done. You look at problems and see opportunities. That's rare. It's just practical. It's more than that. It's vision." He closed the ledger. "All right, tell me your plan." They spent the next hour mapping out the future, expanding the garden, maybe adding fruit trees, keeping the cattle operation but smaller and more focused. building up the chicken flock for steady egg income, creating multiple revenue streams so they weren't dependent on any one thing. It was ambitious, it was risky, but it was possible. "We can do this," Elena said. "I know we can?" "Yeah, I think we can too." April brought the first real warmth. Elena planted the expanded garden while Caleb worked with the new cattle. Maggie helped where she could, growing taller and more capable every day. One afternoon, Elena was weeding when she heard a wagon approaching. She looked up to see a family she didn't recognize, a man, a woman, and 3 small children. Caleb emerged from the barn. "Can I help you folks?" The man climbed down. "Sorry to bother you. We're heading west, but our wagon's got a broken axle. We saw your ranch and hoped maybe you could help with repairs." Caleb examined the wagon. "I can fix it. Take a few hours, though." "We can pay." "Don't worry about payment. Just help yourself to water from the well." Caleb glanced at Elena. "My wife might have food to spare if you're hungry." Elena saw the family's gaunt faces, the threadbare clothes, and remembered being stranded herself not so long ago. "Come inside. I'll make lunch." While Caleb worked on the wagon, Elena fed the family. The woman was grateful to the point of tears. "We left Missouri with everything we owned," she explained, "heading to California, hoping to start over. But the journey's been harder than we expected." "I understand," Elena said. "I came west 6 months ago with nothing but a trunk and 17 cents. The woman's eyes widened. "And now look at you. You've got a home, a family, a life." "I got lucky. Met the right people at the right time." Elena packed extra food for their journey. "But I also worked hard. Didn't give up when things got difficult." By evening, the wagon was fixed and the family was ready to leave. The man tried again to pay, but Caleb refused. "Just help someone else when you get the chance," he said. "That's how it works out here." After they left, Elena and Caleb stood watching the wagon disappear down the road. "That was us 6 months ago," Elena said quietly. "Me, anyway. Desperate and alone. And now you're the one helping people." Caleb put his arm around her. "Funny how life works." Elena leaned into him. "You know what I realized today? I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that." "Yeah? Yeah, this life. It's hard and uncertain and nothing like I planned, but it's mine, ours, and that makes it perfect." "Not perfect," Caleb corrected gently, "but real. And real is better." Summer arrived with its usual demands. The garden flourished under Elena's care. The cattle fattened on good grass. Maggie learned to read full sentences and started helping with simple accounting. The ranch hummed with life and purpose. In July, Jim Robertson stopped by with news. "Heard from a buyer in Denver. He's looking for quality vegetables for the hotels. Willing to pay premium prices if you can deliver regularly." Elena's mind raced. How much product would he need? "More than you've got, but if you expanded, brought in help for harvest, you could probably manage it." After Jim left, Elena and Caleb discussed it seriously. The Denver contract could change everything, but it would require investment and risk. "What do you think?" Caleb asked. "I think it's an opportunity we can't pass up, but we'd need to hire help, maybe 2 people for the season." "That's money we don't have yet." "No, but the Crawfords might loan it to us, and if this works, we pay them back in full by fall." Caleb looked at his wife, this woman who'd transformed his failing ranch into something with real potential. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure that doing nothing gets us nowhere. I'm sure that we've survived worse risks." Elena met his eyes.
This story was posted
"But only
on
if
the
you're
channel
comfortable with
west
it.
of Betrayal.
This is your family's
Please
land.
do not
You
repost
get
it
final
in any
say."
form.
Caleb thought about his father and grandfather, about the traditional cattle ranch they'd built. Then he thought about Elena's vision, diverse, adaptable, forward-thinking. "Let's do it," he said. "Let's take the chance." They borrowed money from the Crawfords, hired 2 young men from town, and threw everything into expanding production. The work was brutal, but Elena drove them all forward with quiet determination. By August, they were delivering vegetables to Denver twice a week. The money was good, better than cattle had ever been. They paid back the Crawfords early and still had profit left over. One evening, after a particularly successful delivery, Caleb found Elena in the garden at sunset. She was standing among the plants, looking tired but satisfied. "You did it," he said. "You saved the ranch." Elena turned to him. We did it. Together. But you're the one who saw the possibility. Who had the vision? And you're the one who trusted me enough to try. Who was willing to change tradition for something better? Elena took his hand. That takes courage. Or desperation. No. Courage. Desperation would have been giving up, selling out, walking away. You chose to fight, to adapt. That's brave. Caleb pulled her close. We make a good team. Yeah, we really do. September brought the harvest, vegetables and cattle both ready for market. They sold almost everything at good prices, bringing in more money than the ranch had seen in years. Sitting at the kitchen table counting cash, Elena felt something she'd never felt before. Security. Real security, not the conditional kind Thomas Garrett had offered, but the kind you build with your own hands. We're going to make it, she said, almost disbelieving. We already made it. Caleb looked at the ledgers. We're out of debt. We've got money saved. The ranch is stable. Your grandfather would be proud. I think he'd be confused about the vegetables. But yeah, eventually he'd be proud. Caleb closed the ledger. More importantly, I'm proud of us, of what we built. October marked a year since Elena had arrived in Willow Creek. On the anniversary, Caleb surprised her with a small party. Just close friends, nothing fancy. Mrs. Crawford raised a glass. To Elena, who came west with nothing and built everything, and to Caleb, who was smart enough to see what he had before it slipped away. Everyone drank. Elena felt her eyes sting. Speech, Jim Robertson called out. Elena stood, not having prepared anything. I'm not good at speeches, but I want to say, a year ago I was standing at a train station thinking my life was over. I'd been rejected, stranded, humiliated. I had 17 cents and no plan. She looked around at the faces of people who'd become family. Now I have a home, a husband, a daughter, a community. I have purpose and partnership and love. Her voice cracked slightly. I have everything that matters. So thank you, all of you, for taking a chance on a stranger who didn't know where she belonged. You belong here, Alice Porter said firmly. You've always belonged here. The party continued late into the evening. When everyone had left and Maggie was asleep, Elena and Caleb sat on the porch wrapped in blankets against the October chill. You know what I've been thinking about? Elena said. What? That letter from Thomas Garrett, the one that said I was unsuitable. Want to burn it finally? No, I want to keep it. She looked at him. Because it's a reminder that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing in disguise. If he'd accepted me, I would have married him. I would have spent my life trying to be suitable for someone who saw me as a problem to manage. Instead, you married someone who sees you as a partner. Exactly. Someone who doesn't need me to be anything other than myself. Elena smiled. So I'm keeping that letter. As proof that rejection isn't the end. Sometimes it's just a redirection towards something better. Caleb kissed her. You're a wise woman, Mrs. Hale. I had good teachers. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge. Elena thought about the year behind them, the struggles and triumphs, the fear and faith, the slow building of trust. She thought about the family she'd found. Caleb, with his quiet strength and fierce loyalty. Maggie, with her endless chatter and generous heart. The community that had embraced her despite initial doubts. She thought about the ranch, transformed from a failing cattle operation into a diverse, thriving business. About the garden that had saved them, the vegetables that had given them options, the willingness to adapt that had made survival possible. Most of all, she thought about the person she'd become. Not the frightened woman who'd arrived with nothing, and not the hardened survivor who'd learned to need no one. Something in between, someone strong enough to be vulnerable, brave enough to stay, wise enough to know that home isn't a place you find, but something you build. What are you thinking about? Caleb asked. Everything. Nothing. How far we've come. We've come pretty far. And how far we still have to go. That too. Caleb pulled her closer. But we'll figure it out. We always do. Elena leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. This was home. Not the house, or the land, or even the town. But this, two people choosing each other every day. Three people, counting Maggie. A family built not on blood or tradition, but on commitment and love and the willingness to show up even when things got hard. Winter came early that year, November snow blanketing the ranch in white. But inside the house, warmth reigned. Fires in the hearth, food in the pantry, money in the bank. Security they'd earned through hard work and smart planning. Elena stood at the kitchen window one morning, watching snow fall, and felt a peace so complete it almost frightened her. She'd spent so many years waiting for the other shoe to drop, for happiness to be revealed as temporary. But this wasn't temporary. This was her life now, solid and real and permanent. Maggie came running in, breathless with excitement. "Mama, Papa says we can build a snowman after chores." "Then we better finish chores quickly." They worked together, the three of them, clearing paths and feeding animals and carrying wood. Then they built the snowman, Maggie directing operations with the authority of a general. Caleb lifted her onto his shoulders so she could place the carrot nose. "Perfect," Maggie declared. Elena took a mental picture, this moment, this family, this life. She wanted to remember it always, wanted to remember how it felt to be exactly where she belonged. That evening, after Maggie was in bed, Elena and Caleb sat by the fire with tea. They'd fallen into this routine, these quiet moments at day's end where they could just be together. "I was thinking," Caleb said, "about next year." "What about it?" "Maybe we could hire permanent help, someone to assist with both the cattle and the garden. Take some pressure off us." Elena considered. "That would mean less profit, but more time, more balance." He looked at her. "I don't want us to work ourselves to death, Elena. I want us to actually enjoy this life we've built." She understood what he wasn't saying, that they'd been so focused on survival, they'd forgotten to live. "You're right. Let's do it." "Yeah? Yeah. We've proven we can make it work. Now let's prove we can make it good." They planned into the evening, talking about expansion and sustainability and building something that would last, not just for them, but for Maggie, for future generations. "Do you ever think about more children?" Caleb asked suddenly. Elena's breath caught. They'd never discussed this directly. "Do you want more children?" "I don't know, maybe. If you did." He looked nervous. "I know you didn't plan on being a mother at all. I don't want to assume—" "I'd like more children," Elena said quietly. "Someday, when things are more stable, when we're not scrambling just to survive." Caleb's face transformed. "Really? Really? I love being Maggie's mother. I'd love to do it again, if we're blessed that way." He kissed her, deep and grateful. "Thank you." "For what?" "For wanting a future with me, for seeing past survival to what comes after." "That's easy. You make it easy to imagine forever." Spring came again, the second spring Elena had seen in Colorado territory. The garden exploded with new growth. The cattle thrived. They hired a young man named David who worked hard and didn't ask too many questions. With the extra help, Elena had time to breathe, to read books in the afternoon, to teach Maggie more advanced lessons, to sit on the porch with coffee and just watch the world. One May afternoon, she was doing exactly that when Mrs. Crawford stopped by unexpectedly. "I have news," she said, eyes twinkling. "The town council is forming a women's committee to address local issues. Education, health, community support. They asked me to chair it, and I want you to join." Elena blinked. "Me?" You're smart, organized, and you understand what it's like to need help. Plus, everyone respects what you've done with the ranch." "I don't know anything about committees. None of us do. We'll figure it out together." Mrs. Crawford smiled. "Think about it. We meet next week."
This story was posted on the channel
Elena
west
sat with
of
the
Betrayal.
invitation,
Please
turning
do
it
not
over in her
repost
mind.
it in any form.
A year ago, she'd been an outsider, someone people whispered about. Now she was being asked to help shape the community. She told Caleb about it that evening. "You should do it," he said immediately. "It's time I don't have—" "We'll make time. This is important." He took her hands. "You've spent a year proving yourself, Elena. Now it's time to step into who you actually are, a leader, someone people look to." "That's a lot of pressure." "You can handle it. You've handled everything else." So Elena joined the committee. They met weekly, tackling issues from schooling to medical care to supporting families in crisis. Elena found she was good at it, organizing, problem-solving, seeing connections others missed. At one meeting, they discussed helping new arrivals to the territory. People like Elena had been, stranded and desperate. We should create a fund, Elena suggested. Small loans or grants to help people get established. Nothing huge, just enough to bridge the gap. Who would manage it? Mrs. Henderson asked. We all would, as a committee. They voted unanimously to create the fund, with Elena taking the lead on administration. It felt right, using her experience to help others avoid the desperation she'd known. Summer brought another successful harvest. They delivered to Denver regularly, built relationships with other buyers, diversified even further. The ranch was thriving. More importantly, the family was thriving. Maggie was reading at an advanced level. Caleb smiled more, laughed often, looked 10 years younger than when Elena had first met him. And Elena herself felt settled in a way she'd never imagined possible. In August, she realized her monthly cycle was late, then very late. She waited another week, not wanting to hope too early before telling Caleb, I think I might be pregnant. He froze in the middle of fixing a fence post. What? I'm not certain yet, but the signs are there. Caleb dropped his tools and crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. Are you happy about it? Terrified. But yes, happy. Me too. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Me too. Dr. Miller confirmed it in September. Elena was pregnant, due in late winter. Maggie was over the moon at the prospect of being a big sister. Caleb walked around grinning like an idiot for weeks. Elena was scared. Pregnancy was dangerous, childbirth even more so. But underneath the fear was joy. They were bringing a new life into this world they'd built. A child who would know security and love from the start. Fall came with its familiar rhythms, harvest, sales, preparation for winter. But this time Elena worked more carefully, mindful of the life growing inside her. Caleb was protective to the point of annoyance, constantly telling her to rest. I'm pregnant, not dying, she said after he'd insisted she stop lifting a basket of vegetables. I just want you safe. I am safe. I'm fine. She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. We're fine. The baby became real to all of them that day. Not just an abstract future event, but an actual person, growing and waiting to join their family. Winter was gentler that year, or maybe they were just better prepared. Elena slowed down as her pregnancy progressed, letting David and Caleb handle the heavier work. She focused on planning, on keeping the books, on teaching Maggie. In January, during a rare warm spell, Elena stood in the garden planning spring planting. It was hard to believe that just over a year ago she'd been fighting to keep this place alive. Now it was thriving, profitable, secure. Caleb found her there, as he often did. What are you thinking about? How much has changed? How much we've built? We've built a lot. A business, a family, a life. Elena looked at him. Do you ever regret it? Asking me to stay? Never, not for a second. He pulled her close, careful of her growing belly. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, to us. Even when I'm stubborn and difficult? Especially then. He grinned. Keeps things interesting. She laughed and kissed him, and standing there in the garden they'd planted together, Elena felt the truth of her own life settle around her like a warm coat. She'd come west looking for security, for a defined role, for someone to tell her she was enough. Instead, she'd found something infinitely better. She'd found partnership with a man who saw her value. Motherhood to a child who needed her, community with people who respected her, purpose in work that mattered. Most importantly, she'd found herself. Not the scared woman who'd arrived with 17 cents, not the defensive survivor who'd learned to need no one, but someone in between, someone who could be strong and vulnerable, independent and connected, practical and hopeful. Someone who understood that home wasn't something you stumbled across or were given. It was something you built brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. The baby came in late February during a snowstorm, a boy they named Daniel. The birth was hard, but Elena survived it, and when Dr. Miller placed the tiny, squalling infant in her arms, she felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. Caleb cried. Maggie declared herself the best big sister in Colorado Territory. Elena just stared at her son, this perfect small person who existed because she'd been brave enough to stay. Spring arrived as it always did, with mud and melting snow and the promise of new growth. Elena recovered slowly, adjusting to life with an infant while managing a household and a business. It was chaos, but it was beautiful chaos. On a warm April afternoon, she sat on the porch with Daniel sleeping in her arms, watching Caleb and Maggie work in the garden. They were planting the early vegetables, Maggie chattering while Caleb listened patiently. Mrs. Crawford rode up, tying her horse and joining Elena on the porch. "How are you managing?" she asked. "Exhausted, happy, both at once." "That's motherhood in a nutshell." Mrs. Crawford smiled at the baby. "He's beautiful." "He is. I still can't quite believe he's ours." "Believe it. You've earned every bit of this happiness." Elena thought about that word, earned. She'd worked hard, sacrificed, fought for this life. But had she earned it? Maybe that was the wrong question. Maybe it wasn't about earning or deserving. Maybe it was simply about choosing. Choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. Choosing to trust when trust felt dangerous. Choosing to build something permanent when everything in her experience said permanence was a lie. "Can I tell you something?" Elena said. "Something I've learned?" "Of course. I spent most of my life thinking I had to earn my place, that I had to prove my worth, meet certain standards, be suitable." She looked at her sleeping son. "But that's not how it works. Worth isn't something you earn, it's something you claim. You decide you matter, and then you live like it's true." Mrs. Crawford was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That's wisdom. It's hard-won wisdom. The best kind usually is." They sat together while Caleb and Maggie finished planting. The sun was warm, the air smelled like earth and possibility, and Elena felt something she'd been chasing her whole life without knowing it. Contentment. Not the absence of struggle. There would always be struggles. Not perfection, life was too messy for that. But the deep bone-level satisfaction of knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do with exactly the people who matter most. That evening, after dinner and after the children were in bed, Elena and Caleb stood at the bedroom window looking out at the ranch, the barn they'd repaired, the garden they'd expanded, the pastures with healthy cattle, the home they'd built together from almost nothing. "You know what I realized today?" Elena said. "What?" "I'm not afraid anymore." Caleb turned to look at her. "Afraid of what?" "Losing this. Losing you. Losing everything we've built." She leaned into him. "For so long I was terrified that happiness was temporary, that any moment it would all fall apart. But I'm not afraid of that anymore." "What changed?" "I did. I realized that even if we lost everything tomorrow, the ranch, the money, all of it, we'd still have each other. We'd still have our family. We'd rebuild because that's what we do." Elena looked up at him. "The security I was looking for when I came west? I found it. But not in a place or a bank account. In us. In this family we chose." Caleb pulled her close. "I love you, Elena Hale. I love you too." They stood together, two people who'd found each other at the worst possible time and built something extraordinary from the wreckage. Outside, the ranch settled into evening quiet. Inside, their children slept peacefully. And Elena Cruz, who'd arrived in Colorado territory with 17 cents and a broken heart, felt the truth of her own life settling around her like a blessing. She'd been called unsuitable by a man who couldn't see past her name. She'd been rejected and stranded and left with nothing. But she'd survived. More than survived. She'd thrived. She'd built a home and a family and a life that mattered. Not because someone gave her permission or declared her worthy, but because she'd claimed her own worth and refused to let anyone take it away. That was the lesson, she thought. The one she'd learned through pain and struggle and slow
This story
won
was
trust.
posted on the channel
Your
West
worth
of
isn't
Betrayal.
determined by who accepts
Please do not
you or what you
repost
achieve.
it in any form.
It's inherent, unshakable, yours to claim and defend and live into. And when you find people who see that worth, who choose you not despite your flaws but including them, you hold on to them. You build something with them. You create a home not just in a place but in each other. That's what she and Caleb had done. They'd taken two broken people and a struggling ranch and built a family, built a future, built something worth fighting for. She thought about the woman she'd been 18 months ago, standing on that train platform with a rejection letter burning in her pocket. If she could go back and tell that woman one thing, it would be this. The life you're meant for is waiting just past the point where you want to give up. The family you need is standing at the end of a dirt road, in a weathered house, with open arms and an uncertain future. All you have to do is be brave enough to stay. Elena Cruz had stayed. She'd fought and struggled and doubted and persevered. And in doing so, she'd found something more precious than security or acceptance or any practical arrangement. She'd found home. Real home. The kind you build with love and stubbornness and the willingness to show up every day even when it's hard. She'd found herself. And that, she thought, watching the stars emerge over the Colorado mountains, was worth every moment of fear it took to get here.